The universe doesn't care about your plans. Captain Benjamin Sisko had learned that lesson fighting Cardassians, negotiating with Vorta, and maintaining an uneasy peace at the mouth of the only stable wormhole connecting two quadrants. He'd learned it commanding a space station that sat at the crossroads of galactic politics, where every decision rippled across light years and affected millions of lives. But nothing, not the Prophet's cryptic warnings, not Starfleet's tactical briefings, not even his own emissary visions, had prepared him for what happened at 0347 hours station time. Deep Space Nine's long-range sensors detected it first. Chief Miles O'Brien was pulling a double shift in ops, covering for Lieutenant Nog, who'd finally collapsed after 36 hours straight repairing the station's sensor grid. The Irish engineer had just poured his fourth cup of coffee, thick, black, and strong enough to strip paint, when every alarm on his console screamed simultaneously. Mother of... O'Brien's mug hit the deck, shattering. Hot coffee sprayed across his boots. He didn't notice. The sensor readings made absolutely no sense. Spatial distortion, off the scale. Energy output, beyond scale. Dimensional variance, readings that shouldn't exist outside theoretical physics papers written by scientists who'd been laughed out of Starfleet Academy. Major! O'Brien's voice cracked across ops. Major Kira, I need you here now. Major Kira Nerys abandoned the duty roster. She'd been reviewing personnel assignments that suddenly seemed laughably insignificant and crossed to O'Brien's station in 3 strides. Years of resistance fighting had taught her to recognize genuine terror in a soldier's voice, and O'Brien's voice carried that particular flavor of fear that came from seeing something that violated every assumption about how reality worked. What am I looking at, Chief? I don't know. O'Brien's hands flew across his console, pulling up every sensor feed, every scanning protocol, every diagnostic system DS9 possessed. Bearing 271 Mark V, range 40,000 kilometers and closing. It's not a wormhole opening, the energy signature's completely wrong. It's not cloaked vessels decloaking, the spatial distortion's too massive. Major, space itself is tearing. Kira's hand moved instinctively to her comm badge. Kira to Sisko. Captain, get to ops immediately. We have a situation. On my way. Benjamin Sisko's voice carried the instant alertness of someone who'd learned to wake from deep sleep to full tactical awareness in seconds. What kind of situation? The kind where I don't have words to describe what's happening, sir. You need to see this. Kira's finger stabbed the red alert control. Klaxons blared throughout Deep Space Nine's 21 kilometers of corridors, habitat rings, and docking pylons. Crew scrambled to battle stations with practiced efficiency, born from 3 years of Dominion War operations. Shields powered up, weapons charged, emergency bulkheads sealed with pneumatic hisses that echoed through the station like the breathing of some massive beast preparing for combat. Captain Sisko materialized from the turbo lift 45 seconds later, still fastening his uniform jacket. Commander Worf emerged behind him, the Klingon tactical officer's hand already resting on his disruptor. Lieutenant Commander Jadzia Dax took her science station without a word, her trill spots pronounced in the emergency lighting as her fingers danced across controls with 8 lifetimes of expertise. Report. Sisko's command voice cut through the organized chaos of ops transitioning to combat alert. O'Brien gestured at the main view screen. Sir, watch. The view screen showed what every sensor was screaming about. Reality coming apart at the seams. It wasn't the elegant blue-white shimmer of the Bajoran wormhole opening, that graceful unfolding of subspace geometry that had become familiar over 3 years. This was violent, a crimson wound in space-time, pulsing with energy signatures that made Dax's science console emit warnings in 3 different languages. Space folded, reality bent. Dimensions that should remain theoretical became suddenly, terrifyingly physical. Benjamin, Dax's voice carried the controlled urgency of someone witnessing something that shouldn't be possible. This isn't normal subspace topology. The dimensional barriers between our universe and somewhere else are collapsing. It's like someone punched a hole through the fabric of reality itself, and something massive is forcing its way through. The view screen flared brilliant white. Energy cascaded outward in patterns that hurt to look at. Photons behaving in ways that violated 3-dimensional physics. Light moving along pathways that existed in dimensions human eyes weren't designed to perceive. DS9's shields engaged automatically, buckling under the shockwave. Warning alerts cascaded across every station. Power fluctuations, shield stress, subspace distortions affecting everything from sensors to replicators. And then, through the dimensional rupture, she emerged. The vessel was enormous, easily 100 meters from bow to stern, twice the length of a Galaxy-class starship, dwarfing even the massive Dominion battlecruisers that had terrorized Federation space. But size alone didn't capture the wrongness of it. The hull was predominantly white and red, its design incorporating angles and curves that seemed to shift between utilitarian warship and something almost organic. Massive engine nacelles, if they were engines, bore no resemblance to standard warp drive configurations. They looked almost like folded wings. Technological and biological principles merged in ways that made Starfleet's engineering philosophy look quaint by comparison. But what made O'Brien's engineer's heart skip a beat was the power. His sensors registered energy output that dwarfed anything short of a Borg cube. Reactor signatures that didn't match matter-antimatter annihilation, warp core containment, or any power generation system in Federation databases. And surrounding the hull, an energy barrier that definitely wasn't standard deflector shields. "Sweet Mother of Mercy," O'Brien whispered, "scan it." Sisko's voice was steady, but his eyes tracked the vessel with the intensity of someone calculating tactical scenarios at light speed. "I want everything. Configuration, power output, weapons capability, crew complement. Everything." Dax's hands moved with practiced grace across her console. "Captain, this is going to sound impossible, but that vessel's power generation is off the scale. Energy output suggests technology centuries beyond our own. I'm reading what looks like thermonuclear fusion, but there's dimensional stabilization involved that we can't even classify. And Benjamin..." She looked up, genuine awe mixing with concern in her ancient eyes. "There's an artificial intelligence running that ship, not just a sophisticated computer core like Data's positronic brain. An AI with processing capacity that makes our most advanced systems look like basic calculators." Worf growled from tactical. "Captain, I am detecting weapons. Many weapons. 40 missile tubes, each capable of carrying multiple warheads based on dimensional capacity. Energy weapon emplacements I cannot identify, and what appear to be fighter launch bays for small craft numbering in the dozens." "Are they powering weapons?" Sisko asked. "Negative, but their shields, if that's what that energy barrier is, are at full strength. They are prepared for combat, but not initiating hostile action." On the view screen, the massive vessel hung in space like a predator assessing its surroundings. Running lights pulsed in patterns that might have been communication attempts or targeting sequences, impossible to tell without context. "Try hailing them," Sisko ordered. "All frequencies, all languages, universal translator set to maximum sensitivity." Kira worked her communications console. No response, Captain. They're broadcasting, but it's not subspace-based communication. I'm detecting something that registers as fold waves. That's not a term in our database, but the computer's trying to translate the transmission protocol. Our systems can't decode it. Keep trying, and Dax, already on it, Benjamin. I'm analyzing everything about that vessel. Configuration, propulsion, weapons, power signatures. Give me a few minutes and I might be able to— Captain! Worf's voice carried Warrior's urgency. 3 Jem'Hadar attack ships just dropped out of warp. Bearing 092 Mark III. They are targeting the unknown vessel. Of course they were. The Dominion controlled this sector through overwhelming force and paranoid aggression. Their philosophy was brutally simple. Unknown variables were threats to be eliminated before they became problems. The Jem'Hadar, soldiers bred in genetic engineering vats, conditioned from birth for absolute loyalty to the Founders. Addicted to Ketracel White to ensure obedience, wouldn't hesitate, wouldn't question, wouldn't negotiate. They would attack, and they would continue attacking until either they or their target ceased to exist. "Hail the Jem'Hadar," Sisko ordered, knowing it was futile but required by protocol. "Tell them to stand down. That vessel hasn't demonstrated hostile intent, and we're attempting first contact." "They're not responding, sir." Kira's voice was tight, "and they're charging weapons." The 3 Jem'Hadar attack ships, sleek insectoid designs that looked like they'd been grown rather than built, opened fire without warning. Polaron beams lanced across 40,000 kilometers of vacuum. Weapons specifically designed to cut through Federation shields, to render Starfleet's primary defensive technology useless. The Dominion had spent decades developing weapons that exploited every weakness in Federation technology. The beams struck the unknown vessel's hull and dissipated. That strange energy barrier, not shields in any conventional sense, absorbed the Polaron beam impacts like water swallowing stones. Barely a flicker, no visible damage. The massive vessel didn't even register the attack on O'Brien's sensors beyond noting the energy transfer. Their shields absorbed the full impact, Dax reported, her voice carrying scientific fascination that bordered on inappropriate given the situation. "Benjamin, whatever that barrier is, it's operating on principles we don't understand. The Polaron beam's shield-penetrating properties were completely negated. Then the unknown vessel responded." What happened next would be analyzed in Starfleet tactical databases for years, studied by officers who specialized in asymmetric warfare, used as examples in academy courses on unconventional combat doctrine. The massive vessel's fighter bays opened. Launch tubes lit up with internal illumination, and dozens of small craft emerged in precise formation. But these weren't shuttlecraft or runabouts or anything resembling conventional fighter design. They were sleek, aerodynamic in ways that made no sense for spacecraft operating in vacuum. White and red paint schemes with distinctive skull insignias that proclaimed their squadron identity with warrior pride. Each fighter was perhaps 20 meters long, armed with what looked like missile hardpoints and gun pods, moving with acceleration curves that should have liquefied unaugmented pilots. "Captain," Worf's voice carried the respect of someone who recognized martial excellence regardless of origin. "Those fighters are executing combat maneuvers that violate our assumptions about inertial dampening and pilot tolerance. They're pulling what my sensors register as 15 Gs sustained, 20 plus in burst acceleration." "That should kill the pilots," O'Brien interjected. "No human, no humanoid can survive that kind of force without—" The lead fighter did something impossible. Mid-flight, traveling at velocities that would make intercept calculations a nightmare, the fighter transformed. Wings folded, fuselage sections shifted. In 3 seconds, 3 seconds, the aerodynamic fighter reconfigured into a humanoid battle mech standing perhaps 15 meters tall. A mechanical warrior armed with what could only be described as a rotary cannon the size of a shuttlecraft, now standing upright in space like some ancient samurai ready for combat. "What in the prophet's name?" Kira breathed. The mech mode fighter rolled, dodging a Jem'Hadar disruptor burst with centimeter precision, then transformed again into an intermediate configuration. Legs deployed for enhanced maneuverability, while wings remained extended for forward thrust, a hybrid form that combined the advantages of both fighter and mech, and it opened fire. The rotary cannon, a massive GAU-17A-25 gun pod, loaded with armor-piercing discarding sabot rounds, spun up with a sound that registered on audio sensors as pure mechanical violence. Depleted uranium penetrators accelerated to hypersonic velocities by electromagnetic acceleration rails. The rounds punched through the lead Jem'Hadar attack ship's hull like it was tissue paper, not through shields. The shields were simply overwhelmed by kinetic energy transfer that exceeded their maximum dissipation capacity. The physical rounds accelerated to velocities that made them more dangerous than energy weapons at close range, tore through armor plating designed to withstand polaron beams and photon torpedoes. Atmosphere vented explosively. The Jem'Hadar attack ship's structural integrity collapsed as multiple hull breaches cascaded into catastrophic failure. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash of liberated plasma. 3 seconds. The entire engagement had lasted 3 seconds. "Blessed prophets," Kira whispered. The second Jem'Hadar vessel, piloted by warriors who knew no fear and accepted death as honor in service to the Founders, attempted a kamikaze ramming attack. Standard Dominion tactics when conventional weapons failed. Use the ship itself as a weapon, sacrifice the crew, complete the mission. Another transforming fighter, blue and white color scheme, medical cross markings suggesting a squadron support role, intercepted. The pilot transformed to Batroid mode mid-approach, used the mech's superior maneuverability to literally flip over the attacking ship while maintaining forward momentum, and raked the Jem'Hadar vessel's dorsal surface with sustained gunpod fire. Secondary explosions rippled along the attack ship's hull. Plasma conduits ruptured, power distribution failed. The vessel's trajectory became uncontrolled tumble as maneuvering thrusters died. It exploded seconds later, far enough from DS9 that debris posed no threat to the station. The third Jem'Hadar ship never had a chance. The massive unknown vessel, the mothership these fighters had launched from, began to move. Not thrust or acceleration in conventional terms, but transformation on a scale that made the fighters' shapeshifting look trivial. Hull sections that had seemed like engine blocks unfolded into arms. Panels that appeared to be weapons arrays reconfigured into massive hands. The ventral hull split and reformed into legs. The entire vessel, all 400 meters and several million tons of it, transformed from a warship into a colossal humanoid battle mech over 400 meters tall. "Mother of God," O'Brien whispered for the second time in 5 minutes. His voice carried the awe of someone witnessing their entire understanding of engineering principles proven inadequate. The transformed ship, the Macross quarter in battle mode, though no one on DS9 knew that designation yet, raised one massive arm. Energy gathered at what could only be called its fist, dimensional resonance building to levels that made Dax's science console emit warnings about localized space-time stability. The heavy quantum reaction beam cannon fired. The beam was coherent destruction. Dimensional energy focused through fold carbon lenses, accelerated through reaction chambers that operated on principles Starfleet wouldn't discover for another century. It struck the third Jem'Hadar attack ship with enough force to overwhelm not just shields, but the fundamental molecular bonds holding the vessel together. The attack ship didn't explode. It vaporized. One moment it existed as a functioning warship with 42 Jem'Hadar soldiers aboard, their genetic programming driving them toward honorable death in service to the Founders. The next moment it was expanding plasma and trace particulates, dispersing into vacuum so completely that debris recovery would be impossible. The entire engagement, from first Jem'Hadar shot to final ship vaporization, had lasted 47 seconds. Ops was absolutely silent. Every officer, every technician, every person watching the view screen processed what they'd just witnessed. 3 Jem'Hadar attack ships, vessels that had terrorized Federation space, that had destroyed more Starfleet ships than anyone wanted to calculate, obliterated with casual efficiency by fighters that could transform, and a capital ship that became a 400-meter battle mech. Sisko stood perfectly still, his command presence filling the space around him as his tactical mind processed implications at light speed. Variable geometry fighters that outperformed anything in Federation or Dominion space. Transformation technology that suggested engineering principles completely outside known parameters. Energy weapons that vaporized targets with single shots. Kinetic weapons that made conventional armor obsolete. And a ship that transformed into a battle mech wielding firepower that rivaled anything short of a Borg cube. They had just arrived in his sector, damaged and desperate if that dimensional rupture was any indication. They'd destroyed 3 Dominion warships in less than a minute, and now they sat at the edge of DS9's defensive perimeter with nowhere to go and no way home. "Chief," Sisko said quietly, his voice carrying absolute calm despite the chaos they'd just witnessed. "Keep trying to establish communications. Every frequency, every protocol we have. Someone aboard that ship speaks something our universal translators can work with." "Aye, sir." O'Brien's hands moved across his console with renewed purpose. "I'm trying everything from basic mathematical progressions to Starfleet First Contact protocols to ancient Earth radio frequencies. If there's a way to talk to them, I'll find it. Major, keep our shields up but hold fire. We don't threaten them, but we don't drop our guard either." "Understood, Captain. Dax, I need you to analyze everything we just saw. I want tactical assessments, technological evaluations, strategic implications. Assume Starfleet Command is going to demand answers within the hour." "Already compiling the data, Benjamin." Dax's hands flew across her console. "Though I should warn you, some of what I'm seeing violates our understanding of physics so completely that I'm not sure how to classify it. Transformation technology alone would require materials science we don't possess. And that beam weapon the mothership fired? It operated on dimensional resonance principles that suggest they're manipulating space-time itself as a weapon delivery system." "Odo," Sisko addressed his security chief via comm badge, "get your teams ready. If that vessel requests docking permission or sends personnel to the station, I want security present but not threatening. Make it clear we're prepared but not hostile." "Understood, Captain." Odo's voice carried the changeling's characteristic pragmatism. "Though I should note that if those pilots can survive the G-forces their maneuvers generated, physical restraint might prove challenging." "Then don't let it come to physical restraint. Diplomacy first, Constable." Sisko turned back to the view screen. The massive vessel, now transforming back into its ship configuration, arms folding into engines, legs reforming into ventral hull, hung in space 40,000 kilometers from DS9. The fighters reformed into a defensive screen, still in their Batroid modes, weapons trained outward but not targeting the station. They were waiting. Waiting for communication, waiting for threat assessment, waiting to see if the next contact would be hostile or peaceful. "Captain," Kira said quietly, moving to stand beside Sisko. Her voice carried the weight of someone who'd fought occupiers and understood the psychology of warriors trapped far from home. That vessel just defended itself with overwhelming force against an unprovoked attack. They could have run. They could have ignored us and focused on escape. Instead, they stayed and fought. Your point, Major? My point is that whoever commands that ship understands military necessity, but they also understand restraint. They destroyed the Jem'Hadar attackers, but they didn't fire on us. They maintained defensive posture throughout. Captain, I think they're as confused and scared as we are. Just better armed. Sisko nodded slowly. Agreed, which means our next move determines whether they become allies or enemies. He looked at the view screen, at the transformed warriors holding position in his sector. Chief, any progress on communications? Sir, I think I've got something. The computer's finally parsing their transmission protocols. It's not subspace-based. They're using something the Universal Translator is calling fold-wave communication, but we're getting enough data overlap that translation might be possible. I'm routing it through every linguistic database we have, and the communications console chimed. O'Brien's eyes widened. Captain, they're hailing us. Audio and visual. Universal Translator it's working. We have communication. On screen. The view screen flickered. The image of the transformed vessel was replaced by what was clearly a command bridge. Sleek, elegant, sophisticated in ways that made Federation design look utilitarian by comparison. Holographic displays showing tactical data, crew stations integrated with the ship's systems in ways that suggested neural interface technology or something equally advanced. And standing at the center of the bridge, a man who looked like he'd been fighting wars for longer than he cared to remember. Captain Jeffrey Wilder was perhaps 45, his face showing the weathering of someone who'd commanded in combat situations where mistakes meant casualties, military bearing that spoke of career officers who'd earned their rank through competence rather than politics, eyes that held the weight of command decisions that haunted quiet moments. When he spoke, the Universal Translator rendered his words with slight delay, the AI processing linguistic patterns and finding Federation standard equivalents. This is Captain Jeffrey Wilder of the Strategic Military Services vessel Macross Quarter, Registry SMC-04. We seem to have experienced a navigational error of unprecedented magnitude. His voice was measured, professional, but carrying underlying tension of someone in a situation beyond their control. Can you tell us where we are? And more importantly, when? When? That single word carried implications that made Sisko's command instincts scream warnings. I'm Captain Benjamin Sisko, commanding Deep Space Nine, United Federation of Planets. You're in the Bajoran system, Alpha Quadrant. Sisko paused, choosing words carefully. Protocol demanded accuracy, but compassion demanded gentleness. As for when, by our calendar, it's stardate 517-21.3, the year 2074. The man on screen, Captain Wilder, exchanged glances with someone off camera. When he looked back, something like grief and recognition warred in his expression. 2374. We're from the year 2059 by our dating system. We were engaged in combat operations against an enemy called the Vajra, when an emergency fold jump intersected with a dimensional anomaly. He straightened, military bearing evident despite the exhaustion in his voice. Captain Sisko, the Strategic Military Services, is a private military contractor operating under license from the new United Nations Spacey. We're not explorers or colonists. We're soldiers protecting civilian colony fleets from hostile alien species. A private military company. Sisko processed that information, seeing Kira's expression harden at the words. Her experience with Cardassian military contractors who'd profited from Bajor's occupation colored her reaction instantly. But before tensions could escalate, Wilder continued. Our fold drive is severely damaged. Our dimensional navigation systems are completely offline, and Captain, genuine concern entered his voice. We have no idea how to get home. We didn't choose to come here. We don't know your politics, your wars, or your allegiances. But we just defended ourselves against an unprovoked attack, and I suspect that's going to complicate your day significantly. Sisko allowed himself a slight smile despite everything. Captain Wilder, you have no idea how complicated. Those ships that attacked you, they're called Jem'Hadar, soldiers of the Dominion, an empire from the Gamma Quadrant currently invading the Alpha Quadrant. They control vast territories through overwhelming military force and genetic engineering, and you just destroyed 3 of their attack ships in under a minute using technology they've never encountered. Which means they'll be back, Wilder said flatly, with more ships, better tactics, and orders to capture or destroy us before we become a bigger threat. He paused. Captain Sisko, I'm going to be direct. We need a place to repair our fold drive, somewhere secure where we can assess damage, fabricate replacement components, and figure out how to generate a dimensional fold that can get us home. We have no interest in your war. We didn't ask to be here, but we will defend ourselves, and we will defend anyone who helps us. Is Deep Space Nine that place? Sisko made his decision in the span of a heartbeat. 3 years commanding a space station at the edge of Federation space had taught him to recognize when people were being honest versus when they were running games. Wilder's voice carried the weight of truth, a commander in an impossible situation, trying to protect his crew, willing to negotiate but prepared to fight. And that dimensional rupture had been real. That vessel's damage was evident in the way it moved, the energy fluctuations O'Brien was detecting. These weren't invaders, they were refugees. Refugees with enough firepower to change the balance of power in the quadrant, but refugees nonetheless. Captain Wilder, you're welcome to dock at Deep Space Nine. We'll provide whatever assistance we can with your repairs. Though I'll be honest, your technology is so far beyond ours that I'm not sure how much help will be. But before you commit to anything, you need to understand the situation you've entered. I'm listening. The Federation is at war with the Dominion. We're allied with the Klingon Empire and maintaining an uneasy peace with the Romulan Star Empire. The Cardassians recently joined the Dominion after decades of conflict with the Federation. This sector is a war zone, Captain. Every decision carries strategic implications, and your vessel, with technology centuries beyond anything in this quadrant, represents either the greatest tactical asset or the greatest threat anyone's seen in years. Wilder was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried resignation mixed with determination. Captain Sisko, the SMS has a saying, we didn't start the war, but we'll damn well finish it. In our universe, humanity learned the hard way that survival sometimes requires uncomfortable alliances and pragmatic decisions. We fought extinction wars against alien species that saw us as food or slaves or obstacles. We've made compromises that kept millions alive. And we've learned that sometimes the choice isn't between right and wrong, but between bad and worse. He leaned forward slightly. If docking at your station means we're entering your war, then so be it. We'd rather fight alongside people who offer help than run and risk getting destroyed by your enemies while we're vulnerable. Send us docking coordinates, Captain. Let's talk face-to-face, commander to commander, and figure out how we all survive the next few weeks. Sisko nodded. Agreed. Major Kira will transmit docking instructions. We'll have medical teams standing by if you have casualties, and my chief engineer will coordinate with your technical personnel on damage assessment. Understood. Macross quarter out. The transmission ended. Ops remained silent for several heartbeats. Then Kira spoke, her voice carefully controlled. Benjamin, we just invited a private military contractor with enough firepower to level a planet to dock at our station. Are we sure this is wise? No, Major, I'm not sure at all. Sisko turned from the view screen to face his crew. But here's what I am sure of. That vessel is damaged. They're far from home with no way back. They'll need allies to survive. And we'll need their help if the Dominion sends a fleet to capture or destroy them, which they absolutely will. The enemy of my enemy, Dax said quietly, understanding Sisko's strategic calculation, becomes my responsibility, Sisko finished. Major, transmit docking coordinates. Chief, start coordinating with their engineering staff. Worf, I want security teams positioned throughout the docking ring, but make it clear they're there for protection, not intimidation. Aye, Captain. And Dax, get me a communication to Starfleet Command, Priority 1, because when Admiral Ross hears about this, and he will within the hour, he's going to have a lot of questions. As DS9's crew moved to execute orders, Sisko stood at the railing overlooking ops and watched through the viewports as the Macross quarter adjusted course toward the station. A vessel from another time, another universe, carrying warriors who fought wars he couldn't imagine, powered by technology that made Federation science look primitive. They had just entered his space station's defensive perimeter. They would dock within the hour, and Sisko suspected, no, knew, that nothing would ever be quite the same again, because the universe didn't care about your plans. It just kept throwing impossible situations at you and demanding you find a way through. And Benjamin Sisko, commander of Deep Space Nine and emissary to the Prophets, had just invited the impossible to dock at his station and ask for help. The only question was whether history would record this as the decision that saved the Alpha Quadrant, or the moment everything changed in ways no one could predict. Outside the viewports, the Macross quarter's running lights pulsed steadily as the massive vessel approached DS9's docking ring. Inside that vessel, 300 crew members who'd been fighting for humanity's survival against impossible odds, prepared to meet people from another universe who fought different wars under different rules. And in the space between DS9 and the quarter, subspace itself still rippled with residual dimensional distortions from the rupture that had brought them together. The dimensional barriers had weakened. The universe had noticed. And somewhere in the vast darkness beyond known space, other forces stirred. Forces that would make the Jem'Hadar look like minor threats. Forces that fed on dimensional instability and chaos. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Today, first contact protocols demanded diplomacy, engineering assessments, and the delicate dance of two military forces trying to determine if they could trust each other enough to survive what came next. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Trek universe, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a ship or character you'd want to see in the comments below. Live long and prosper. If you want to see more epic crossover characters enter into any of the universes like this, hit the like button, subscribe, and suggest in the comments what crossover character you will love to see next. May the Force be with you. The runabout Rio Grande glided alongside the Macross quarter with Chief Miles O'Brien at the helm, and for the first time in 20 years of Starfleet engineering, he felt genuinely inadequate. His tricorder was screaming data that made no sense. The hull wasn't just armor plating, it was adaptive, energy conversion armor that responded to impacts by redistributing molecular bonds across the entire surface. Self-repair systems so sophisticated, they made Federation regenerative hull plating look like duct tape. And the transformation joints, those massive hinges and servos that allowed a 1,400-meter warship to reconfigure into a humanoid battle mech, incorporated materials his tricorder simply labeled as unknown composite, analysis impossible. "Chief," Major Kira said from the pilot's seat, her hands steady despite the tension radiating through her shoulders. "Stop scanning their ship like you're planning to steal it. Captain Sisko wants this to be diplomatic." "Major, I'm not planning to steal anything, I'm just—" O'Brien gestured helplessly at his tricorder. "Look at this. Those aren't standard running lights. They're adaptive IFF transponders using quantum encryption. The hull plating shows evidence of microfracture self-repair happening in real time. And those weapon arrays." He pulled up tactical scans, highlighting the 40 vertical launch system tubes visible on the quarter's dorsal and ventral surfaces. Those aren't just missile tubes. Each one has multiple launch rails, internal dimensional compression allowing them to carry more ordnance than should physically fit. "Major, this ship could fire hundreds of missiles in a single salvo. Our Galaxy-class ships carry maybe 200 photon torpedoes total. This vessel could match that in one launch sequence." Kira's expression tightened. "So we've invited someone who could destroy Deep Space Nine before we scratched their paint. Wonderful." "Aye, but here's the thing, they haven't. They could have opened fire the moment they arrived, could have vaporized us while we were still trying to establish communications. But they didn't. That suggests restraint, Major. Discipline. Someone who understands that firepower without control is just terrorism." The Rio Grande approached the quarter's main hangar bay, a cavernous space that could have held a dozen runabouts with room to spare. O'Brien caught glimpses of what was obviously a maintenance deck, sleek fighter craft in various states of readiness, technical crews swarming over them with practiced efficiency, and repair systems that made Starfleet's facilities look positively archaic, and the fighters themselves. "Sweet Mother of Mercy," O'Brien breathed. Even at rest, they were beautiful. VF-25 Messiah variable fighters, the absolute cutting edge of SMS's military technology. Each one was approximately 20 meters long in fighter mode, painted in distinctive color schemes that identified squadron assignments and pilot personalities. White with red trim for squadron leaders, blue and white for support roles, green for heavy assault configurations. But what made O'Brien's engineer heart race was the equipment. These weren't the stripped-down fighters they'd seen during the battle. These were loaded for war. Fast packs, fuel and sensor tactical packs were mounted on several fighters, massive booster units attached to the wings and fuselage that effectively doubled the fighter's size and quadrupled its combat capability. The packs incorporated additional propellant tanks for extended operational range, micro-missile launcher clusters, each pack carrying 12-plus micro-missiles, beam cannons integrated into the booster sections, enhanced sensor arrays for long-range detection, additional armor plating for survivability. Some fighters wore even more impressive configurations, super packs, the full armored assault loadout that transformed a VF-25 from fast interceptor to heavy siege platform. These incorporated everything the fast packs offered plus heavy beam cannons mounted on articulated arms, large-bore missile launchers for capital ship engagement, reinforced armor plating across all surfaces, enhanced power generation systems, additional thruster clusters for maintaining maneuverability. Despite increased mass, O'Brien's tricorder cataloged weapons that made Federation fighters look like training craft. Here were GU-17A, 20mm Gatling gun pod, 200 rounds of armor-piercing ammunition, cyclic rate of 6,000 rounds per minute, Mahler ROV 25 beam machine guns, mounted in the fighter's head unit, 10,000 shot capacity Bifors BML-4B micro missile launchers, mounted in engine nacelles, 4 missiles per launcher, additional hardpoint missiles, wing pylons carrying standard reaction missiles, anti-ship reaction missiles, 4 super pack configurations, weapons capable of threatening capital ships. And that was just the standard armament before counting what the fast and super packs added. They could have deployed with this equipment during the first engagement, Kira observed, following O'Brien's gaze. But they didn't. They fought with basic loadouts. Because they didn't know what they were facing, O'Brien replied. Smart commanders don't show all their cards in the opening hand. But Major, look at those fighters being prepped now. They're loading for bear. Every hardpoint filled, every launcher packed. Armor configurations that sacrifice speed for survivability. They're expecting the Dominion to come back. Aye. And they're preparing to make the Jem'Hadar regret it. The Rio Grande touched down on a designated landing pad, guided by crew members whose hand signals were universal despite linguistic barriers. The moment the runabout's hatch opened, O'Brien and Kira found themselves facing a welcoming committee that exuded military professionalism. Captain Jeffrey Wilder stood at the center, flanked by officers who represented the best SMS had to offer. To his right stood Commander Ozma Lee, call sign Skull Leader, squadron commander of SMS Skull Squadron, and a man who'd earned his rank through combat that made the Dominion War look genteel by comparison. He was tall, powerfully built, with dark skin and an expression that suggested he'd seen too much combat to be impressed by anything short of actual miracles. His uniform bore the distinctive skull insignia of his squadron, and his eyes held the weight of someone who'd lost pilots he'd trained. Commander Ozma Lee, Wilder introduced, my squadron commander and the best pilot I've ever had the privilege of watching make the impossible look routine. Ozma stepped forward, extending his hand to Kira with military courtesy that transcended cultural barriers. Major Kira, Captain Wilders briefed me on the situation. 3 Jem'Hadar attack ships destroyed, bigger fleet probably incoming, and we're sitting at your station like a target with a bow on top. I've been in worse situations, but not by much. His voice carried the controlled aggression of someone who'd commanded fighter squadrons through battles where one mistake meant pilots didn't come home. Kira shook his hand, recognizing a fellow warrior immediately. Commander Lee, your pilots are impressive. The maneuvers they pulled during that engagement, our tactical officers are still trying to figure out how anyone survived those G-forces. Genetic augmentation, inertial dampening, and training that makes Starfleet Academy look like summer camp, Ozma replied with dark humor. SMS pilots undergo enhancement procedures that increase our G tolerance to 20 sustained Gs, 30 in bursts. Combined with the VF-25's inertial compensation systems, we can pull maneuvers that turn conventional fighter doctrine into confetti. Behind Ozma stood 3 more pilots, each representing different aspects of SMS's variable fighter corps. Lieutenant Alto Sayotome, Wilder gestured to a young man, perhaps 25, with distinctive blue-white hair and eyes that held uncertainty mixed with fierce determination. Skull 4 and one of our most naturally talented pilots despite being the newest member of the squadron. Alto stepped forward, his youth evident but his bearing suggesting combat experience beyond his years. Major, Chief, I'm still learning, but I'll follow Commander Lee into any fight. He's kept me alive this long. Only because you're too stubborn to die, Ozma said with the affection of someone who'd taken personal responsibility for a younger pilot's survival. Kids got instincts that bypass conscious thought. Pulled a maneuver last week that violated 3 laws of physics and 2 SMS regulations. Saved his wingman's life doing it. Next came Lieutenant Michael Blanc, Wilder continued, indicating a lean young man with sharp features and an air of quiet competence. Skull 3, electronic warfare specialist. If you need someone to hack enemy systems, spoof their targeting, or make their sensors lie to them, Michael's your man. Michael nodded politely, his eyes already cataloging every detail of the runabout's systems visible through the open hatch. Chief O'Brien, I've been reading about your EPS conduit configurations through our initial data exchange. Fascinating work, though I have some questions about your plasma distribution efficiency. Later, Lieutenant, O'Brien said with a smile. Engineers recognized fellow engineers regardless of universe. Right now, I think protocol requires we don't immediately start tearing apart each other's technology. The 4th pilot was impossible to miss. Lieutenant Luca Angeloni, Wilder said, gesturing to a young man practically vibrating with barely contained enthusiasm. Our technical specialist and the closest thing SMS has to a miracle worker. If it can be built, modified, or jury-rigged, Luca's done it twice already. Luca bounced forward, actually bounced, with the energy of someone who'd had too much coffee and not enough sleep. Chief O'Brien, your replicator technology is amazing. The ability to convert energy directly into matter with quantum-level precision, that could revolutionize our field fabrication systems. And your transporter technology, matter-energy conversion with pattern buffers, maintaining quantum coherence across kilometers. Do you have any idea how many applications that could have for... Luca, Ozma's voice carried command authority. Breathe. The nice Starfleet officer hasn't even gotten off his ship yet, and you're already overwhelming him with technobabble. Sorry, Commander. Luca didn't look sorry at all. But seriously, Chief, can we talk about your matter-antimatter containment systems? Because our fold drives use dimensional stabilization that might be compatible with... Lieutenant Angeloni, a new voice cut through Luca's enthusiasm with precise clinical detachment. O'Brien turned toward the speaker and nearly dropped his tricorder. She stood at the base of the landing ramp, a woman who appeared perfectly human. Blonde hair, athletic build, wearing a form-fitting uniform that matched the ship's aesthetic. But O'Brien's tricorder was screaming warnings about sophisticated android architecture beneath what his sensors initially registered as biological tissue. She smiled, and it reached her eyes in ways that made O'Brien profoundly uncomfortable with the implications. "Welcome aboard the Macross quarter," she said, her voice carrying no mechanical quality whatsoever, despite the fact that every scan confirmed she wasn't human. "I'm Rami, the ship's AI core and mobile avatar, though avatar really undersells it. This body is as real as yours, Chief O'Brien, just built rather than born." Kira's hand moved instinctively toward her phaser, not threatening but ready. "You're the ship?" "I am the ship," Rami confirmed. "My consciousness extends through every system, every bulkhead, every sensor array. This mobile platform allows me to interact more personally with biological crew and visitors. I can eat, though I don't need to. I can feel temperature, texture, pain. The synthetic skin is indistinguishable, from biological tissue at molecular resolution. For all practical purposes, Major Kira, I'm as real as you are, just constructed using different principles. O'Brien had met Data. He understood artificial intelligence. Commander Data was perhaps the most sophisticated AI in Federation space, a positronic brain that approximated human consciousness with remarkable fidelity. But this was something else entirely. You're fully sentient, O'Brien said quietly. Self-aware, conscious, capable of independent thought and decision-making. Correct. I was designed by the protoculture, the ancient civilization that created the original Macross vessel, to be not just a ship's computer, but a partner. Someone who could understand, advise, and, when necessary, countermand orders if the crew's judgment was compromised. I've been operational for, she paused, calculating, subjectively, about 8 years since Captain Wilder took command. Objectively, my core architecture is over 50,000 years old. 50,000 years. O'Brien felt his worldview expanding uncomfortably. The Federation was perhaps 200 years old. Vulcan civilization stretched back maybe 4,000 years. But this AI, this person, incorporated technology from a civilization that had been building starships when humans were still learning to make fire. Rami, Wilder said gently, recognizing O'Brien's overwhelmed expression. Maybe ease our guests into the deep cosmology. We've got time for existential discussions about ancient precursor civilizations after we deal with immediate problems, like the fact that we're sitting targets and the Dominion probably has intelligence operatives on that station, reporting our capabilities to their superiors. Fair point, Captain. Rami turned back to O'Brien and Kira. Chief, I understand you'll be coordinating engineering assessments with Lieutenant Angeloni. I've prepared complete technical documentation on our fold drive systems, specifications, operational parameters, damage reports. Fair warning, about 70% of it will be completely incomprehensible because it operates on dimensional physics that don't exist in your universe. But the remaining 30% should give you enough context to understand what we need. Appreciated, O'Brien said, finding his professional footing again. An engineering problem was an engineering problem regardless of how exotic the technology. Lieutenant Angeloni, let's start with a visual inspection of your fold drive. I'll bring Lieutenant Dax, our science officer, down for the technical review. Between the three of us, we might be able to figure out what's salvageable and what needs fabrication from scratch. Excellent. Luca was already pulling up holographic schematics on a portable display unit. The main issue is the fold quartz matrix. It's fractured in multiple locations because we tried to maintain dimensional resonance with our home universe while transiting through the rupture. The crystalline structure literally tore itself apart, trying to connect to a dimensional framework that doesn't exist here. Fold quartz, O'Brien repeated, his engineer's mind already working the problem. That's not a material we have. Can it be synthesized? In theory, yes. In practice, Luca's expression showed doubt. Fold quartz forms naturally in superdimension space, a higher dimensional framework that exists adjacent to normal space-time. Your universe doesn't appear to have superdimension space, which means synthesizing fold quartz would require creating the dimensional conditions for its formation. That's complicated. Complicated, but possible? Chief O'Brien, Rami interjected with a slight smile. You'll learn that complicated but possible is how SMS approaches most engineering challenges. We've spent decades reverse engineering technology from ancient alien civilizations who viewed physics as suggestions rather than laws. If there's a way to synthesize fold quartz in this universe, we'll find it. The question is whether we find it before the Dominion sends a fleet to capture or destroy us. Wilder stepped forward, his command presence filling the hangar. Which brings me to the practical question. Captain Sisko mentioned your station has industrial replicators. Can they fabricate materials based on quantum-level specifications if we provide complete molecular data? Within limits, O'Brien replied. Our replicators can reproduce most materials up to complexity levels that don't require exotic matter or dimensional stabilization. But Chief, if fold quartz requires superdimension space to form, replicators won't help. We'd need to actually create that dimensional framework, and that's theoretical physics so far beyond our current capabilities that we'll need to invent entirely new branches of science just to attempt it, Luca finished. Yeah, we know. That's why our optimistic timeline for repairs is 3 weeks minimum. Realistically, it could take months. Months. Kira and O'Brien exchanged glances, both processing the strategic implications. The Macross quarter sitting at DS9 for months, while the Dominion, Cardassians, Romulans, and every other intelligence service in the quadrant tried to steal, study, or destroy it. Captain Wilder, Kira said carefully, you understand that your presence here creates complications. The Dominion will want your technology. The Cardassians will try to steal it. Even some Federation factions might view you as either a resource to exploit or a threat to contain. Major, SMS has operated as a private military contractor for decades. We're familiar with being viewed as resources, threats, or inconvenient variables. Wilder's voice carried the weariness of someone who'd fought political battles as exhausting as military ones. But here's what I can promise. We won't share our technology with anyone without extensive legal review and contractual agreements. We won't allow ourselves to be exploited or contained. And we will defend ourselves and our allies with every weapon system we possess. Even if defending yourselves means fighting Federation citizens, Kira pressed. Even then, though I'd really prefer it didn't come to that. Ozma stepped forward, his warrior's instincts reading the tension building. Major Kira, let me put this in terms that might help. SMS exists because humanity in our universe learned that survival requires people willing to stand between civilians and extinction. We've fought wars you can't imagine, against the Zentradi who nearly destroyed Earth with a bombardment that killed billions, against the Vajra, insectoid aliens that attacked colony fleets with swarm tactics and biological weapons. We've made compromises that kept people alive. We've killed enemies who gave us no choice. And we've learned that sometimes the only thing between civilization and chaos is someone willing to pull the trigger. His voice hardened. But we're not murderers. We're not conquerors. We're professionals who understand that power without discipline is just thuggery. You want to know if we'll fight Federation citizens? Ask us to do something that violates our contracts, our ethics, or our survival, and find out. But if you treat us like allies instead of prisoners, you'll find we're the kind of people you want on your side when things go to hell. Silence hung in the hangar for several heartbeats. Then Kira smiled slightly. Commander Lee, I think you and I are going to get along just fine. Anyone who's that comfortable threatening violence while maintaining professional courtesy has spent time in real combat. The Bajoran resistance taught me the same lessons. Resistance fighter, Ozma's expression showed respect. Against the Cardassians, Captain Wilder briefed me. Decades of occupation, guerrilla warfare against superior forces kept fighting until you won independence. Major, I've commanded pilots through suicide missions and impossible odds. I recognize fellow warriors, and I'm telling you straight, SMS will stand with DS9 if the Dominion comes back. Not because we're getting paid, not because we owe you anything yet, but because that's what soldiers do when they find themselves in someone else's war zone. You stand with the people who offered help. Alto spoke up, his younger voice carrying conviction. Major Kira, Commander Lee's right. We didn't ask to be here, but we're not running while you face enemies alone. Skull Squadron is combat ready. Every pilot, every VF-25 loaded with full armament and standing by. The Jem'Hadar want round 2? We'll teach them why SMS has never lost a squadron engagement. Even against 60 ships? Kira asked quietly. Even against 60 ships, Ozma confirmed. Major, I've flown against Vajra swarms numbering in the thousands. Capital ships the size of small moons. Battle pods that moved like liquid through three-dimensional space. 60 Dominion warships is scary, but it's not impossible. Not with the quarter's firepower, your station's defenses and pilots, who've trained for exactly this kind of mismatch since day one. O'Brien cleared his throat, breaking the tension. If we're all done posturing about who's fought the scariest aliens, which, for the record, the Borg still win that contest, perhaps we could focus on practical matters, like making sure the quarter doesn't become a sitting target while we debate military philosophy. Agreed, Wilder said. Chief O'Brien, Lieutenant Angeloni will give you a complete tour of our full drive systems. Major Kira, I'd like you to meet with our tactical team to coordinate defensive strategies if the Dominion returns. Commander Lee, I want Skull Squadron running combat drills. Full fast-pack configurations coordinated with DS9's defensive systems. Yes, sir. Ozma turned to his pilots. Alto, Michael, Luca, get the birds prepped. I want fast packs on the interceptors, super packs on the heavy assault units. Full missile loadouts, beam cannons charged, every system tested and certified. We've got maybe 4 hours before someone makes a move. Let's be ready. The pilots scattered to their fighters with practiced efficiency. O'Brien watched them go, noting how each pilot performed pre-flight checks with the casual competence of people who'd done this hundreds of times. Alto climbed into a white and red VF-25F, the squadron leader's personal craft, and immediately began syncing with the fighter's AI systems. Michael approached a blue and white VF-25G configured for sniper operations, its long-range beam rifle visible in the weapon hardpoints. Luca practically danced around a VF-25 painted in technical analysis orange, already running diagnostic routines, and surrounding them dozens more fighters in various configurations. Standard VF-25 Messiahs in fighter mode, others in Gerwalk mode, the intermediate configuration with legs deployed but wings extended. Several in full Batroid mode, standing like mechanical sentries with gun pods held at ready positions. Chief, Rami said quietly, moving to stand beside O'Brien. I know what you're thinking. You're calculating whether these fighters represent salvation or catastrophe, whether we're the tactical advantage that saves DS9 or the catalyst that escalates this war beyond anyone's control. Are you reading my mind? O'Brien asked, only half joking. No, but I've been observing humanoid behavior for 50,000 years of cumulative processing time. You're predictable in the best way. You're trying to protect people. It's admirable. She gestured at the fighters, at Skull Squadron preparing for combat. These pilots aren't warriors because they love violence, Chief. They're warriors because someone has to be. Because colony fleets full of civilians need protection. Because the universe is hostile and unforgiving, and the only thing between extinction and survival is people willing to fight. That's a dark philosophy. It's a realistic philosophy, Rami corrected. Chief O'Brien, you've fought the Dominion. You know what's coming. The Jem'Hadar won't negotiate. The Founders won't compromise. They'll send overwhelming force to capture or destroy us, and anyone who stands with us becomes a target. Captain Wilder knows this. Commander Lee knows this. Every pilot in Skull Squadron knows this, and they're choosing to stand with DS9 anyway. Why? Kira asked, having listened to the exchange. Why risk your lives for people you just met? We're not paying you. You have no contracts with the Federation. Why not just leave? Find somewhere to repair in peace. Rami's smile was sad, ancient, carrying weight of millennia. Because, Major, some things matter more than contracts or survival calculations. Captain Sisko offered help when he could have quarantined us or turned us away. He extended trust when paranoia would have been justified. And SMS remembers what it's like to need help desperately and have people refuse because the cost was too high. She looked at the fighters, at the pilots preparing for combat. When the Zentradi bombarded Earth, when billions died in hours, humanity survived because people stood together. When the Vajra attacked colonial fleets, when entire populations faced extinction, SMS stood between civilians and chaos. We remember what it's like to be desperate and terrified and alone. And we're not letting Captain Sisko face that alone. Not while we have weapons that work and pilots who can use them. O'Brien found himself deeply moved despite his engineer's pragmatism. That's good people, Rami. Your captain's crew, they're good people. They're survivors, Chief. Same as you. Same as Major Kira. Same as everyone who's fought wars they didn't choose and survived through skill, luck, and refusing to quit when quitting would be easier. Rami's expression became more focused. Now come on. I need to show you the fold drive before Lieutenant Angeloni bores you to death with technical specifications. Fair warning, about half of what he says will be incomprehensible technobabble even to you. I'm an engineer, O'Brien replied with dignity. We live for incomprehensible technobabble. As they headed deeper into the Macross quarter, passing through corridors that incorporated technology from civilizations that had risen and fallen while Earth was still cooling from stellar formation, O'Brien couldn't shake one thought. The Federation had just gained allies who could change the war. The question was whether they could survive long enough to matter. Outside on DS9's docking ring, Odo watched the Macross quarter through viewports and considered the implications. A private military company with transformation technology, AI consciousness, and weapons that vaporized Jem'Hadar attack ships, docked at his station, under his security jurisdiction. This was going to be complicated. On the Macross quarters bridge, Captain Wilder reviewed damage reports and calculated timelines. 3 weeks minimum to repair the fold drive, assuming they could synthesize materials that didn't exist in this universe. Months, realistically, during which every intelligence service in the quadrant would try to steal, study, or destroy them. And the Dominion would come, not with 3 ships, with 50, with soldiers bred for combat and administrators genetically programmed for loyalty, with orders to capture SMS technology at any cost. Wilder made a command decision. Communications, get me a secure channel to Commander Lee. Tell him I want Skull Squadron running combat drills with full fast-pack configurations within the hour, and have Lieutenant Angeloni coordinate with Chief O'Brien on emergency defense protocols. If the Dominion comes back, I want us ready to make them regret it. Aye, sir. Wilder looked at the view screen showing Deep Space Nine's impressive structure, a Cardassian mining facility converted into a Federation outpost. sitting at the mouth of the only stable wormhole connecting two quadrants, strategically vital, militarily important, and now hosting a vessel that could tip the balance of power. "Rami," he said quietly, knowing the AI was listening through her distributed consciousness, "what are our odds of surviving the next 3 weeks?" Calculating. A pause. 37% if we remain defensive. 52% if we coordinate fully with DS9's forces. 68% if we demonstrate overwhelming force early and establish deterrent credibility. So we need to hit hard, fast, and show the Dominion that attacking us costs more than the reward is worth. Essentially, yes, Captain. Wilder nodded slowly. Then that's what we'll do. Prepare full combat assessments. I want to know every weapon DS9 possesses, every tactical advantage, every vulnerability the Dominion might exploit. And Rami. Yes, Captain? Thank Captain Sisko for offering help. It's been a while since anyone treated SMS like allies instead of assets. Already sent, Captain. Though I suspect Captain Sisko would say that's what Starfleet does, helps people who need it regardless of strategic calculation. Then we found the right people to work with, Wilder said quietly. Now let's make sure we survive long enough to deserve that trust. The bridge crew continued their work, preparing for combat that everyone knew was coming. Outside, stars that weren't home hung in configurations that no SMS navigation charts recognized. They were far from home, damaged, vulnerable, but they weren't alone, and sometimes that made all the difference. Captain Benjamin Sisko's office overlooked the promenade, the beating heart of Deep Space Nine, where species from a dozen worlds conducted business, traded goods, and maintained the fragile peace that made civilization possible in a war zone. He stood at the viewport watching a Ferengi merchant negotiate with a Bajoran shopkeeper while Odo's security personnel maintained unobtrusive vigilance. It was almost peaceful. Almost. Behind him, Captain Jeffrey Wilder studied a holographic display showing the tactical situation in the Bajoran sector. Dominion-controlled space to the galactic south, Cardassian territory to the east, Klingon patrol routes to the north, and right in the center, Deep Space Nine, sitting at the mouth of the wormhole like a cork in a bottle that every major power wanted to control. Your position is simultaneously the best and worst in the quadrant, Wilder observed. Strategically vital, diplomatically important, and militarily vulnerable. I've commanded outposts in hostile territory before, Captain Sisko, but this, he gestured at the tactical map. You're not just holding a position, you're holding a principle, that the wormhole remains open to everyone, that trade continues despite war, that civilization persists, even when violence would be easier. That's what the Federation does, Sisko replied quietly. We believe that some things are worth defending regardless of strategic calculation, freedom of movement, open trade, the idea that different species can coexist without conquest or subjugation. And the Dominion believes the opposite, that order must be imposed, chaos must be controlled, and different species are threats to be contained or eliminated. Wilder turned from the tactical display. Captain, I need to understand your political situation completely before SMS commits to anything, because once we publicly ally with the Federation, we become targets for every faction that opposes you, and I need to know what wars we're buying into. Sisko appreciated the directness. Too many commanders hid behind diplomatic language when clarity would serve better. The Dominion is a multi-species empire controlled by shapeshifters called Founders, Sisko began, pulling up additional data on the holographic display. They created the Vorta, genetically engineered administrators, and the Jem'Hadar, soldiers bred for combat and absolute loyalty. The Dominion controls most of the Gamma Quadrant through overwhelming military force and genetic programming that makes rebellion essentially impossible. He highlighted territory maps showing the scope of Dominion influence. 2 years ago, they began invading the Alpha Quadrant with the stated goal of imposing order on what they view as chaos. The Federation has been fighting a defensive war ever since, allied with the Klingon Empire and maintaining uneasy neutrality with the Romulan Star Empire. Recently, the Cardassian Union, our former enemy, allied with the Dominion after decades of conflict with the Federation. So you're fighting a two-front war against enemies with superior numbers and genetic soldiers who view death as victory, Wilder summarized. That's uncomfortably familiar. Your Zentradi Wars, among others. SMS was founded because humanity in our universe learned that survival sometimes requires military capabilities civilian governments can't provide efficiently. We've fought extinction wars, Captain, against enemies that saw us as food, slaves, or obstacles. The Vajra alone nearly destroyed 3 colony fleets before we developed counter-tactics. Wilder's expression darkened with memory. I understand what it's like to fight enemies who won't negotiate, won't compromise, and won't stop until you're dead or they are. Sisko gestured to the chairs. Both captains sat, the formal postures of diplomatic first contact, relaxing slightly into the more honest body language of soldiers discussing war. Captain Wilder, I'm going to be direct because I think you'll appreciate honesty more than diplomacy. Your vessel represents technology that could change this war. Variable fighters that outperform anything in known space. Transformation capabilities that make conventional tactical doctrine obsolete. Energy weapons that vaporize capital ships. And an AI with processing capacity that exceeds anything we've developed. Sisko leaned forward. Multiple factions are going to want that technology. The Dominion will try to capture it. The Cardassians will try to steal it. Hell, there are elements within the Federation who will view your vessel as either a resource to exploit or a threat to contain. And I need to know, right now, before this goes any further, what SMS's position is going to be. Wilder met Sisko's gaze steadily. SMS's position is survival. We'll defend ourselves and our allies with every weapon we possess. We won't allow our technology to be stolen or exploited, and we won't surrender sovereignty to anyone, not the Federation, not the Dominion, not even your Starfleet command. That's going to create political complications. I'm aware. But Captain, here's what I can offer. SMS will coordinate with DS9's defensive operations. We'll share tactical intelligence about our capabilities so you can integrate our forces effectively. We'll stand with the Federation against the Dominion because their philosophy of imposed order is antithetical to everything we believe civilization should be. But we're not joining Starfleet. We're not surrendering command authority. We're offering alliance, not submission. Sisko considered this carefully. Starfleet regulations were clear about foreign military forces operating in Federation space. But regulations were written for normal circumstances, and nothing about the Macross quarter qualified as normal. I can work with that, Sisko said finally. Starfleet Command won't be thrilled, but they'll accept it when they see the alternatives. Though I should warn you, there are Federation organizations that operate outside official channels, intelligence services, black ops groups, people who believe security justifies methods that official policy wouldn't approve. Section 31, Wilder said, surprising Sisko. Your Lieutenant Dax mentioned them during our data exchange. unaccountable intelligence organization that manipulates Federation policy through covert action. We have similar groups in our universe, Captain, and SMS has learned how to deal with them. Which is, we make it clear that attempting infiltration, sabotage, or theft will result in consequences that outweigh any intelligence gain. We protect our technology through encryption, compartmentalization, and security protocols that make penetration expensive enough to not be worth the cost. Wilder's voice hardened. And if someone crosses that line anyway, we respond with extreme prejudice. SMS isn't a government bound by diplomatic constraints. We're a private military company with the legal authority to defend our assets and personnel using any means necessary. That's a dangerous position to take in Federation space. It's the only position we can take. Captain Sisko, the moment we appear weak or exploitable, every intelligence service in the quadrant will try to steal our technology. Better to establish clear boundaries now, loudly, publicly, with consequences for violation, than fight 100 covert intrusions over the next 3 weeks. Before Sisko could respond, his comm badge chirped, "Ops to Captain Sisko." Dax's voice carried controlled urgency. "Benjamin, we have a situation developing. A Klingon bird of prey just decloaked on our doorstep. IKS Chitang under General Martok's command. And he's demanding to speak with both you and Captain Wilder. Says it's a matter of warrior honor and strategic importance." Sisko and Wilder exchanged glances. General Martok, Sisko explained quickly, is one of the most respected military commanders in the Klingon Empire, veteran of more campaigns than most officers see in a lifetime, lost his eye fighting the Dominion, and has a well-earned reputation for tactical brilliance and absolute honesty. So, either he wants to fight us or recruit us. With Klingons, it's often both simultaneously. They respect strength and despise weakness. If Martok wants to speak with you, it means he watched your fighters destroy those Jem'Hadar ships and recognized martial competence. Then I guess we should find out what a Klingon general wants with SMS. Wilder stood, military bearing evident. Though fair warning, Captain, if he challenges me to ritual combat, I'm declining. SMS doesn't have time for honor duels when we've got fold drives to repair. Sisko smiled slightly. Martok's more pragmatic than most Klingons. He'll respect directness over ceremony. Just don't insult his military record and you'll be fine. 10 minutes later, both captains stood in DS9's wardroom as the view screen activated, showing the bridge of a Klingon bird of prey. Dark, aggressive design philosophy evident in every aspect of the ship's internal architecture. Weapon status displays given more prominence than scientific instruments. And standing at the center, a Klingon who looked like he'd been carved from granite and tempered in battle. General Martok wore his scars like medals. His remaining eye studied Wilder with the intensity of someone who'd survived countless engagements by reading opponents accurately. His uniform bore decorations that spoke of campaigns across the quadrant, and his posture radiated the confidence of someone who'd commanded warriors through situations where one mistake meant entire crews died. "Captain Sisko," Martok's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "I watched your sensor logs of the engagement with Jem'Hadar attack ships. 3 vessels destroyed in 47 seconds, using tactics I have never encountered in 30 years of military service. Variable geometry fighters that move like nothing in known space. A capital ship that transforms into a battle mech, wielding a beam weapon that vaporizes targets completely." He leaned forward, his remaining eye fixed on Wilder. "I am General Martok, son of Urthog, commander of the 9th Fleet, veteran of campaigns against Romulans, Cardassians, and the Dominion. I have fought enemies across the quadrant and earned my rank through blood and victory, and I wish to speak with the commander, who leads warriors skilled enough to make 3 Jem'Hadar attack ships look like training targets. Wilder stepped forward, meeting Martok's gaze directly. Captain Jeffrey Wilder, Strategic Military Services, Macross Quarter. My pilots are professionals trained to fight wars that make conventional doctrine obsolete. But General, I should clarify something immediately. SMS is a private military contractor, not a government military force. We're paid to protect people, not conquer territory or accumulate glory. If you're looking for warriors who fight for honor, we'll disappoint you. We fight for survival and contracts. Silence hung in the wardroom for 3 heartbeats. Then Martok threw back his head and laughed, a booming sound that seemed to fill the entire space. Ha! Honest to the point of insult. I like you already, Captain Wilder. Martok's expression became more serious, though amusement still danced in his eye. Too many warriors hide behind ceremony and pretty words. They speak of honor while pursuing personal advantage. But you state clearly that you're mercenaries paid to fight. That's refreshing honesty. We prefer corporate security specialists, Wilder replied dryly. Mercenaries has negative connotations in our marketing materials. Martok laughed again. Better and better. Captain Wilder, let me speak plainly because Klingons value directness over diplomatic games. I watched your fighters during that engagement. They pulled maneuvers that should have liquefied your pilot's internal organs. They transformed between configurations mid-combat with timing that suggests cybernetic neural interfaces or genetic enhancement. And they destroyed 3 Jem'Hadar attack ships, vessels that have terrorized Federation space, with casual efficiency that suggests extensive combat experience. He gestured at tactical displays showing the battle replay. Those weren't lucky shots. That wasn't superior technology compensating for inadequate skill. That was tactical genius executed by pilots who understand 3-dimensional combat at instinctive levels. Your squadron leader, the one with skull insignia, pulled a maneuver that trapped a Jem'Hadar ship in its own momentum and used it as a weapon against the second attacker. That's warrior thinking, Captain. That's someone who understands that battles are won through intelligence, not just firepower. Commander Ozma Lee, Wilder confirmed. 20 years SMS service, veteran of the Vajra Wars and multiple colony defense operations. He's survived situations that killed better-equipped pilots through sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat. I trust him with my life, General, and more importantly, I trust him with my pilots' lives. As a commander should, Martok nodded approvingly. Captain Wilder, I did not contact you to issue challenges or demand honor duels. I contacted you because the Klingon Empire recognizes martial competence when we see it. Your vessel represents capabilities that could change this war. Your pilots represent skill that most Klingon warriors train their entire lives to achieve. And I wish to know, will you stand with the Federation and Klingon Empire against the Dominion? Or will you attempt neutrality that will inevitably fail when they come to capture or destroy you? Wilder glanced at Sisko, then back to Martok. General, SMS will defend DS9 if attacked. We'll coordinate with Federation and Klingon forces to repel Dominion aggression. But we won't commit to offensive operations or long-term military campaigns. We're trying to repair our fold drive and get home. That's our primary objective. Everything else is secondary to survival and returning to our own war. Honest answer, though tactically naive, Martok observed. Captain, the Dominion doesn't care about your intentions or objectives. They saw you destroy 3 attack ships. They detected technology they don't understand, And the founders, the shapeshifters who control the Dominion, have one fundamental principle: eliminate threats before they become unmanageable. They will come for you, not with 3 ships, with 50, 100, whatever force they calculate is necessary to capture or destroy your vessel. We're aware of the tactical reality. Are you prepared for it? Martok pressed. Because I've fought the Dominion for 2 years, Captain Wilder. I've seen fleets that outnumbered us 10 to 1. I've watched Jem'Hadar soldiers accept death with religious fervor to complete their missions. I've seen Vorta administrators negotiate surrender terms while simultaneously preparing biological weapons. The Dominion isn't an enemy that can be intimidated or negotiated with. They must be defeated completely, or they'll keep coming until you're dead or they are. Wilder's expression hardened. General Martok, SMS has fought extinction wars against the Zentradi, giant humanoid warriors whose fleets numbered in the millions, who bombarded Earth and killed billions in hours. Against the Vajra, insectoid aliens that attacked colony fleets with swarm tactics and biological weapons that adapted faster than we could develop countermeasures. We understand fighting enemies that won't stop. We understand accepting casualties to protect civilians. And we understand that sometimes survival requires making the other side hurt so badly they decide attacking you costs more than any victory is worth. Martok's remaining eye gleamed with fierce approval. Now that is warrior thinking, not honor dueling or ceremonial combat, but pragmatic acknowledgement that some enemies must be hurt badly enough to create deterrence. He leaned back in his command chair. Captain Wilder, the Klingon Empire offers assistance in repairing your vessel. We have industrial fabricators, engineering specialists, and tactical intelligence about Dominion fleet movements. In exchange, I ask only that you coordinate with Federation and Klingon forces when the Dominion inevitably attacks Deep Space Nine. That's surprisingly generous. The Klingon Empire recognizes strategic advantage when presented. Your vessel, operational and allied with us, is worth more than your vessel captured by the Dominion. Simple calculation, Captain. We help you survive. You help us win this war. Everyone benefits except our enemies. General Martok, Sisko interjected. Starfleet Command will need to approve any formal alliance arrangements. But speaking as the commanding officer of DS9, I welcome Klingon assistance in protecting this station and helping Captain Wilder's crew return home. Then it's settled. Martok's expression carried satisfaction. Captain Wilder, I invite you and your squadron commander to the Chitang for blood wine and tactical discussions. No ceremony, no formality, just warriors discussing how to kill enemies efficiently. Are you interested? Wilder couldn't help but smile. General, I think SMS and the Klingon Empire are going to get along just fine. Give me 2 hours to coordinate with Commander Lee, and we'll shuttle over. Excellent. Prepare yourselves for drinks strong enough to kill humans and tactical debates that last until dawn. Kapla. The transmission ended. Sisko turned to Wilder with a slight smile. Congratulations, Captain. You just earned Martok's respect, which is worth more in Klingon circles than most formal treaties. He doesn't invite people to drink blood wine unless he genuinely likes them. I'm honored, though I'm concerned about the strong enough to kill humans part of that invitation. Pace yourself and you'll be fine. Probably. Before they could continue, Sisko's comm badge chirped again. This time, Odo's voice carried the changeling's characteristic blend of pragmatism and concern. Captain Sisko, I need you in security immediately. We've identified a potential intelligence operative on the promenade, conducting surveillance of the Macross quarters docking location. Cardassian civilian merchant. but his behavior patterns match Obsidian Order methodology. He's being very careful, very professional, but he's definitely gathering intelligence for someone. Sisko's expression hardened. The Obsidian Order, Cardassia's intelligence service, was legendary for ruthless efficiency and complete disregard for conventional morality. If they were already surveilling the quarter, it meant Cardassian intelligence viewed SMS as either a resource to exploit or a threat to contain. Detain him? Wilder asked. No, not yet. He hasn't technically broken any laws. He's just observing and listening. But Odo's right to be concerned. The Obsidian Order doesn't send operatives for casual intelligence gathering. They're preparing something. Sisko activated his comm badge. Odo maintains surveillance, but don't detain unless he attempts active infiltration. And alert Major Kira, I want security doubled around the quarter's docking port. Already done, Captain. Wilder's tactical mind processed implications rapidly. They'll try to steal technical specifications, infiltrate our systems, bribe crew members, or simply plant surveillance devices near our docking location. Standard intelligence methodology. Can they penetrate your security? Not easily. Rami monitors every system through her distributed consciousness. We use quantum encryption that makes your best systems look like children's codes, and SMS personnel undergo security vetting that weeds out anyone susceptible to bribery or coercion. Wilder paused. But Captain, perfect security doesn't exist. Someone will get lucky eventually. Someone always does. Then we make sure their intelligence is expensive enough that they decide the cost outweighs the benefit. Sisko's voice carried command authority. Odo's the best security chief in the quadrant. If Cardassian operatives want to steal information from this station, they'll work for every byte. 30 minutes later, in DS9's security office, Odo reviewed surveillance footage with Sisko, Kira, and Wilder. The suspect was a Cardassian merchant named Garrick, someone Odo had monitored for 3 years with professional suspicion. Elam Garrick, Odo explained, pulling up detailed records. Officially a tailor running a clothing shop on the promenade. Unofficially, former Obsidian Order operative exiled to DS9 for reasons he's never fully explained. He claims he's retired from intelligence work, but I've watched him gather information with practiced ease for years. On the surveillance footage, Garrick moved through the promenade with casual grace, stopping at shops, chatting with merchants, positioned near viewports that provided clear sightlines to the Macross quarter's docking location. Never obviously staring, never taking obvious recordings, but always positioned where information could be gathered. He's good, Wilder observed. Professional tradecraft. He knows exactly where your surveillance cameras are positioned because he's been mapped them over 3 years. He's using ambient conversation to cover intelligence gathering, and he's never in one location long enough to clearly establish hostile intent. Can you prove he's gathering intelligence about your vessel? Kira asked. Legally, no. Tactically, absolutely. Wilder leaned forward, studying Garrick's movements. Watch his positioning. Every location he visits has clear sight lines to our docking port. He's cataloging our external hull configuration, counting visible weapon ports, analyzing traffic patterns. But he's doing it casually enough that without surveillance awareness, you'd think he was just a curious merchant. So what do we do? Sisko asked. Confront him. Detain him. We can't arrest someone for being in public spaces. We let him gather surface-level intelligence, Wilder replied. Let him see what we want him to see, enough to establish deterrence without revealing actual capabilities. Basic fighter counts, general hull configuration, obvious weapon emplacements, information that confirms we're heavily armed but doesn't give away technical specifications. or operational doctrine. You want to let him spy on you. I want to control what intelligence he gathers. There's a difference. Wilder's tactical experience showed clearly. If we try to completely shut down his intelligence gathering, the Cardassians will just use more aggressive methods. But if we provide carefully curated information that suggests attempting infiltration would be expensive and dangerous, they might decide stealing SMS technology isn't worth the cost. Odo nodded slowly, appreciating the pragmatic approach. You're treating intelligence operations like negotiations. Give them enough to satisfy curiosity without providing anything actionable. Exactly. Though, Constable, I'll need your help. Garrick needs to see security measures that suggest penetration would be difficult. Not locked doors and guards. That just tells them where valuable information is kept. But sophisticated monitoring systems, encryption protocols, security protocols that suggest we're professionals who've dealt with intelligence operations before. I can arrange that. Though I should warn you, if Garrick is still active Obsidian Order, he'll report everything he observes directly to Cardassian intelligence. And they'll share relevant information with the Dominion. You're not just managing Cardassian spying, you're managing Dominion intelligence gathering by proxy. Understood. But that's actually useful. If the Dominion receives intelligence suggesting the Macross quarter is heavily defended and attacking us would be expensive, they might commit fewer resources to initial assault. Give us more time to prepare. Sisko considered the strategic calculation. It was risky, allowing intelligence operatives to gather information about Federation allies. But Wilder's logic was sound. Better controlled information release than aggressive counterintelligence that would escalate into covert warfare. All right, we let Garrick observe from public spaces. But Captain Wilder, if Cardassian operatives attempt active infiltration, boarding your vessel, hacking your systems, bribing your crew, I want them arrested immediately. Are we clear? Crystal clear, Captain. And if they cross that line, SMS will prosecute with extreme prejudice. We don't tolerate espionage against our forces. As they continued reviewing surveillance protocols, none of them noticed the small figure in shadows near the security office, a Bajoran dock worker who'd been cleaning viewports but listening carefully to every word. Someone who would report details to interested parties, someone who represented the very penetration they were discussing preventing. Because perfect security was impossible, someone always got lucky. Someone always found the crack in defenses. And in the intelligence warfare about to unfold, the question wasn't whether information would be stolen. The question was who would control what information leaked, and how that information would shape decisions made by powers who controlled fleets that could reshape the quadrant. Meanwhile, in the Gamma Quadrant, aboard a Dominion command ship that served as mobile headquarters for their Alpha Quadrant invasion, a founder received intelligence reports about the engagement at Deep Space Nine. The shapeshifter processed information with cold logic, born from millennia of imposing order on chaos. 3 Jem'Hadar attack ships destroyed in under a minute. Technology that didn't match any known configuration. Transformation capabilities that suggested engineering principles completely outside Dominion understanding. Variable, unknown, threat. The founder issued orders with absolute authority. Assemble a strike force, not 3 ships, 50. Jem'Hadar battle cruisers, attack ships, and support vessels. Vorta administrators to negotiate if force failed. Explicit orders to capture the unknown vessel, intact if possible, destroy it if necessary, and ensure no technology fell into Federation hands. The dimensional anomaly represented both opportunity and danger. Opportunity because technology that advanced could tip the balance of the war decisively. danger because unpredictable variables threatened the imposed order the Dominion existed to maintain. The strike force would launch within 48 hours, and when it arrived at Deep Space Nine, everyone involved, Federation, SMS, Klingon, and Cardassian, would face a battle that would determine whether the Macross Quarter survived to see home or became another casualty in the Dominion's endless campaign of imposed order. Back on DS9, Sisko stood at his office viewport and watched the Macross Quarter's running lights pulse steadily, a vessel from another universe, carrying warriors who'd fought wars he couldn't imagine, powered by technology that made Federation science look primitive. They had 48 hours, maybe less, before the Dominion responded. 48 hours to coordinate defenses, prepare tactical responses, and hope that SMS's confidence in their capabilities was justified. "Benjamin," Dax's voice came through his comm badge. "You should see this. I've been analyzing the Macross Quarter's energy signatures during that battle. Specifically, the beam weapon they used to vaporize the third Jem'Hadar ship. And it operated on dimensional resonance principles I've never encountered. It wasn't just an energy weapon. It manipulated space-time itself as a weapon delivery mechanism. The beam didn't just destroy the target ship's molecular bonds. It erased the matter from this dimension entirely, converting it directly into energy across multiple dimensional frameworks simultaneously." Sisko processed that information. "How much energy are we talking about?" "Conservative estimate equivalent to several hundred photon torpedoes detonating simultaneously, but concentrated into a coherent beam lasting 3.7 seconds. Benjamin, that weapon, the Macross cannon they called it, represents firepower that rivals anything short of a Borg cube. And according to their technical specifications, it's just one of their weapon systems. They have 40 missile tubes capable of firing hundreds of warheads, energy weapons I can't even classify, and fighter craft that outperform everything we've developed. Are they invincible? No, but they're closer to it than anything we've allied with before. The question is whether that firepower is enough when the Dominion sends 50 ships instead of 3. Sisko was quiet for a long moment. Then he activated his comm badge. "Captain Sisko to all senior staff. Conference room, 1 hour. We need to prepare for Dominion retaliation, and we're going to do it with representatives from SMS and Klingon forces present. It's time to stop treating this as a Federation problem and start treating it as an Alpha Quadrant survival issue." "Understood, Captain." Sisko turned from the viewport. 48 hours to prepare for battle. 48 hours to coordinate forces from 3 different military traditions. 48 hours before the Dominion demonstrated exactly what happened when they decided something was worth destroying regardless of cost. He'd commanded through impossible situations before. The Dominion War had taught him to make decisions with incomplete information and survive through adaptation and tactical brilliance. But this felt different. This felt like one of those historical moments where everything changed, where the actions of the next 48 hours would ripple across decades and reshape the strategic landscape of the quadrant. Deep Space Nine had faced extinction before and survived. The question was whether they could do it again, with allies who brought both salvation and complications in equal measure. Outside, the Macross Quarter sat at its docking port, its crew preparing for combat that everyone knew was coming. Inside, 300 SMS personnel, who'd fought for humanity's survival in another universe, prepared to stand with people they'd just met against enemies they'd never faced. Because some principles transcended dimensions: courage, honor, the willingness to stand against overwhelming odds for people who needed protection. And sometimes those principles were enough. sometimes. The warning came at 0402 hours station time. Lieutenant Nog was the first to see it, his Ferengi ears flattening instinctively as his sensor console lit up with contact markers that just kept multiplying. Captain Sisko to Ops now. His voice cracked despite his best efforts at professional calm. We have massive fleet movement, Dominion forces dropping out of warp, bearing 173 Mark 8, range 12 million kilometers, and closing. How many ships? Sisko's voice came through immediately, alert and focused despite the early hour. Nog's fingers flew across his console, counting contacts as they materialized from warp. 17, 23, 31. Captain, they're still coming through. 47, 52. Captain, sensors are reading 60-plus Dominion warships on intercept course. ETA to weapons range, 45 minutes. The silence on the comm lasted exactly 2 heartbeats. Then Sisko's command voice filled every channel. Red alert, all hands to battle stations. This is not a drill. Major Kira, get the Defiant prepped for immediate launch. Worf, I want every weapon system we have online and charged. Dax, calculate firing solutions for coordinated defense. And someone wake up Captain Wilder. His people are about to earn every bit of respect they've received. On the Macross quarter, alarms blared through corridors still adjusting to Deep Space Nine's daily cycle. Captain Jeffrey Wilder rolled out of his bunk with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd learned to transition from sleep to combat readiness in seconds. Bridge, Wilder, report. Captain, Dominion Fleet inbound. Sensor count shows 63 warships, battle cruisers, attack ships, dreadnoughts. They're coming in coordinated formation, clearly planned assault. His tactical officer's voice carried professional calm that barely masked underlying tension. Sir, this isn't a raid. This is an invasion force. Battle stations. Get Commander Lee to the hangar. I want Skull Squadron in space in 10 minutes. Full combat loadout. Wilder was already fastening his uniform, his mind shifting into combat mode. And someone tell Rami I need transformation readiness on the quarter in 20 minutes. If they want to capture us, they're going to work for it. In the Macross quarter's massive hangar bay, organized chaos erupted as SMS ground crews swarmed over variable fighters with practiced precision. This wasn't the rushed deployment of 3 days ago. This was preparation, methodical, professional, deadly serious. VF-25 Messiahs sat in launch cradles, and every single one wore full combat configuration. Fast packs were being mounted on the interceptor configurations. Alto Saotome's white and red VF-25F, Michael Blank's blue and white VF-25G, and 8 more fighters designated for fast response roles. Ground crews worked with practiced efficiency, securing the massive booster units to wing hardpoints and fuselage attachment points. Twin booster packs adding 12 micro missiles each, 24 total per fighter. Integrated beam cannons built into the booster sections, additional propellant tanks doubling operational range. Enhanced sensor arrays for beyond visual range targeting, reinforced armor plating on critical systems, but 3 fighters received even more impressive configurations. Super packs, the full heavy assault loadout that transformed VF-25s from interceptors into flying battleships. Ozma Lee's VF-25S Messiah, painted in command colors with the distinctive skull insignia, wore the most impressive armament suite in Skull Squadron's arsenal. APS-25A, MF-25 Armored Pack System. Full torso armor with integrated weapons, Bi-4s, HMM-25B high maneuverability missiles, 8 large-bore anti-ship missiles mounted on shoulder racks, Mauler ROV-217C, 20 venom beam cannons, quad-mount beam guns on articulated arms, additional micro-missile clusters, 36 micro-missiles in wing-mounted pods, reinforced energy conversion armor, triple-layer protection across all surfaces, enhanced fold-wave system, improved communications and targeting coordination. 2 more VF-25s wore similar heavy configurations, fighters designated for siege operations, piloted by veterans who'd survived Vajra capital ship engagements and knew how to deliver firepower that threatened vessels 1,000 times their size. Commander Ozma Lee stood in the hangar, watching his pilots run pre-flight checks with the critical eye of someone who'd trained them personally and knew their capabilities down to decimal precision. "Status report," he called out, his voice carrying authority that made technicians move faster without appearing rushed. "Skull 1 through 15, all fighters certified combat ready," his maintenance chief reported. Fast packs on interceptors showing green across all systems. Super packs on heavy assault units locked and loaded. "Captain, we've got enough firepower loaded to threaten a small fleet." "We're facing a large fleet," Ozma replied. "Every missile counts. Every beam shot matters. I want triple checks on all transformation systems. If someone's armor locks during combat because we rushed final inspection, they die. Clear?" "Crystal, Commander." Alto Sao Tome approached, his youth still evident but his bearing showing the confidence of someone who'd survived enough combat to trust his instincts. "Commander Lee, the Dominion fleet composition, 60-plus ships against DS9, the quarter, and whatever Klingon support we can muster. That's 10-to-1 odds, maybe worse." "I've fought worse," Ozma replied, though his expression showed he wasn't dismissing the threat. "The Vajra swarmed us with thousands of capital ships during the 117th Research Fleet incident. We survived because we were better trained, better equipped, and refused to accept that numbers made victory impossible. The Dominion has quantity, we have quality. And transformation technology they've never encountered," Michael Blank added, running diagnostics on his VF-25G's sniper configuration. "They'll expect conventional fighter tactics, maintain formation, establish firing solutions, engage at optimal weapons range. We're going to transform mid-combat, pull maneuvers that violate their tactical assumptions, and hit them from angles they don't have countermeasures for." "Exactly." Ozma pulled up a holographic tactical display showing DS9, the Macross quarter, and the incoming Dominion fleet. "The Federation fights clean. Organized formations, coordinated fire, military doctrine that prioritizes minimizing casualties. The Klingons fight hard, aggressive assault, overwhelming force, warriors honor. SMS fights smart. We exploit every advantage, bend every rule, and win through being willing to do what others won't." He highlighted sections of the Dominion formation. Battle cruisers at the center providing heavy fire support. Attack ships forming screening elements. They'll try to overwhelm DS9's shields through concentrated firepower, while their attack ships hunt the Defiant. Standard Dominion tactics. Brutal, efficient, relies on genetic soldiers who don't fear death. "So we make them fear us instead," Alto said. "No." Ozma's voice hardened. "We make them respect us. Fear is temporary. Respect is what keeps enemies from coming back. We're going to demonstrate that attacking SMS costs more than any victory is worth. We're going to make them watch their fleet get torn apart by fighters they can't track and weapons they can't counter. And we're going to do it professionally, efficiently, without mercy or hesitation." Behind them, Luca Angeloni finished final systems checks on his VF-25, the technical specialist's fighter, loaded with electronic warfare equipment that would make Dominion targeting solutions lie to their fire control systems. "Commander Lee," Luca called out, "I've uploaded Federation tactical data to all fighter AIs. Dominion Polaron beams, plasma torpedoes, disruptor frequencies. We've got countermeasures programmed for everything Captain Sisko's people have encountered, but boss, they've never fought variable fighters before. Their tactical databases won't have any response protocols for transformation combat. Which gives us maybe 5 minutes of complete surprise before they adapt," Ozma replied. "Use that 5 minutes wisely. First wave goes for maximum shock value. Transform at unexpected intervals, pull impossible maneuvers, show them we're operating on completely different tactical paradigms. Make them afraid to close range but unable to effectively target us at distance." He turned to address the entire squadron, his voice carrying across the hangar. "Skull Squadron, you've trained for this. Every simulation, every drill, every combat mission has prepared you for fighting enemies that outnumber and outgun us. The Dominion thinks 60 ships are overwhelming force. They're about to learn that quantity doesn't overcome quality when the quality gap is measured in centuries of technological advancement." Alto, Michael, and the other pilots straightened, combat focus evident in their expressions. "We launch in 5 minutes. Fast pack configurations maintain formation flexibility. You're our interceptors, our rapid response, our ability to be everywhere the enemy doesn't expect. Super pack configurations provide heavy firepower. Your siege platforms, capital ship threats, the hammers that break their battle lines." Ozma's expression became fierce. "The Dominion fights for imposed order. The Federation fights for principles. The Klingons fight for honor. But SMS, we fight for the 300 souls aboard the Macross quarter who depend on us to keep them alive long enough to get home. We fight for the thousands of civilians on DS9 who didn't ask to be targets but deserve protection anyway. We fight because it's our job, and we're the best in known space at what we do." "Kapla!" someone shouted, a Klingon battle cry borrowed from their new allies. The squadron took up the call, voices blending into defiant chorus that echoed through the hangar. On DS9's bridge, Captain Sisko stood at the tactical station with Major Kira, watching the Dominion fleet close to weapons range with inexorable momentum. The view screen showed enough firepower to reduce the station to debris in minutes if they concentrated fire. "Defiant launching now," Kira reported. "Commander Worf has full tactical control. He's requesting permission to engage at extreme range. Hit them before they're in optimal firing position." "Granted. Tell Worf to coordinate with SMS fighters once they launch. I want them working together, not competing for kills." Sisko turned to Dax. "Old man, what are we looking at?" Jadzia Dax's hands moved across her console, with 8 lifetimes of tactical experience guiding her analysis. "Benjamin, the Dominion formation is textbook assault doctrine. Battle cruisers maintaining mutual support distance. Attack ships screening flanks. Dreadnoughts providing command and control. They're expecting us to fight conventionally. Shields, phasers, torpedoes, standard Starfleet defensive posture. Which means they're not prepared for variable fighters that transform mid-combat and a capital ship that becomes a 400-meter battle mech." "Exactly. Their tactical databases won't have any response protocols. We've got maybe 10 minutes of complete tactical surprise before they adapt. After that, it becomes a war of attrition we can't win through numbers alone. Then we make those 10 minutes count." Sisko activated station-wide communications. "All hands, this is the captain. In approximately 8 minutes, 63 Dominion warships will enter weapons range with the explicit goal of capturing or destroying the Macross quarter and everyone who stands with them. We've faced impossible odds before. We've held this station against enemies that outnumbered us, outgunned us. and thought they could break us through sheer weight of firepower. His voice carried absolute conviction. Today, we demonstrate why Deep Space Nine has never fallen, why this station, this crew has survived everything the Dominion, the Cardassians, and the universe itself has thrown at us. We stand with allies from another universe who've earned our respect through courage and competence. We stand with Klingon warriors who understand that honor means standing against overwhelming odds. And we stand for the principle that some things are worth defending regardless of the cost. Sisko paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. All stations, weapons free when they enter range. Target their battlecruisers first. Kill their heavy firepower before it kills us. Coordinate with the Macross Quarter and SMS fighters. And remember, we don't have to destroy their entire fleet. We just have to hurt them badly enough that they decide attacking us costs more than any victory is worth. Deep Space Nine holds. DS9 always holds. Battle stations, let's show them why. The Dominion fleet crossed into weapons range at 0457 hours, and hell came to the Bajoran sector. The lead Dominion battle cruiser, a massive vessel bristling with Polaron beam emplacements and plasma torpedo tubes, opened fire first. Coherent energy beams lanced across millions of kilometers, joined immediately by cascading torpedo spreads from 24 attack ships. Deep Space Nine's shields flared brilliant blue-white as they absorbed impacts that would have destroyed unshielded vessels. The station's weapon platforms returned fire with concentrated phaser arrays and quantum torpedoes. The most advanced weapons Starfleet had developed, refined through 3 years of warfare into instruments of terrifying efficiency. The first Dominion attack ship to reach engagement range exploded as it took simultaneous hits from 3 of DS9's weapon platforms, its shields overwhelmed and hull integrity collapsing in cascading failure. But there were dozens more behind it, and they kept coming with the relentless advance of soldiers who didn't fear death. Then Skull Squadron launched. 15 VF-25 Messiahs screamed out of the Macross Quarter's hangar bays in perfect formation, their fast and super-pack configurations making them look less like fighters and more like flying weapons platforms. They accelerated to combat velocity in seconds, speeds that would have torn Federation fighters apart, velocities that made Jem'Hadar attack ships' acceleration curves look pedestrian. Skull Squadron, this is lead. Ozma Lee's voice filled the tactical net. Remember your training. Fast pack configurations, alpha formation, engage attack ships, demonstrate transformation advantage, super pack configurations, follow my lead, we're going for the battle cruisers. Show these Dominion bastards what 3,000 years of military advancement looks like. Copy that, lead, came the chorus of responses. Let's dance, Ozma added, and his VF-25S transformed. Fighter mode dissolved into Gerwalk, that intermediate configuration with legs deployed for enhanced maneuverability while wings maintained forward thrust. The Super Pack's articulated beam cannons swiveled independently, tracking multiple targets simultaneously with AI-assisted fire control that made human reflexes look slow. Ozma fired. 4 beam cannons discharged in perfect synchronization, their dimensional resonance beams carving through Dominion shields with contemptuous ease. The targeted attack ship's shields didn't just fail, they overloaded, feedback cascading through the vessel's power grid and frying systems that were never designed to handle energy transfer at those magnitudes. The attack ship went dark, dead in space, life support failing, crew facing slow death in vacuum as atmosphere vented through micro-fractures induced by energy weapon impacts. Splash 1, Ozma reported clinically, attack ships are vulnerable to sustained beam fire. Their shields can't handle energy transfer rates our weapons generate. Alto Sayotome engaged a second attack ship with fast-pack micro-missiles, 24 warheads launching in coordinated spread that overwhelmed point defense systems through sheer volume. The attack ship tried evasive maneuvers, but Alto transformed to Batoroid mid-approach, used his mech's superior agility to match the evasion, and emptied his gun pod directly into the ship's impulse drive at point-blank range. The resulting explosion sent debris cascading across the battlefield. Skull 4, kill confirmed, Alto transmitted. Commander was right, they're not prepared for transformation combat. That ship's targeting systems couldn't track me through the mode shift. Bought me 3 seconds of free positioning. Use it, Ozma replied. Skull Squadron vary transformation intervals. Don't let them establish pattern recognition. Be unpredictable. Be chaos. Michael Blank's VF-25G, the sniper configuration with extended range beam rifle, held position at maximum engagement distance, picking off targets with surgical precision. Each shot was calculated, computer-assisted, delivered with accuracy that made conventional targeting solutions look approximate. He didn't waste ammunition on shields. He waited for momentary gaps, split-second vulnerabilities, and punched through with shots that disabled critical systems. A Dominion battle cruiser lost its primary weapons array when Michael's beam rifle severed the power coupling between reactor and emitter. The cruiser didn't explode. It just went silent, drifting with weapons offline and crew scrambling to reroute power through backup systems that were never designed for primary load. Target neutralized, Michael reported, continuing suppression fire. But the Dominion wasn't helpless. Jem'Hadar warriors, soldiers bred for combat, trained from birth, genetically conditioned for absolute loyalty, adapted with terrifying speed. They couldn't match SMS transformation technology, but they could calculate firing solutions, predict movement patterns, and concentrate fire with coordinated precision. 3 attack ships bracketed Alto's VF-25F, firing from multiple vectors simultaneously. Polaron beams converged on his position, shields flaring as they absorbed impacts that would have vaporized unshielded fighters. Taking fire, Alto transmitted, his voice tight. Shields at 60%. They're coordinating better than expected. Break and transform, Ozma ordered. Don't give them predictable vectors. Alto transformed to fighter mode, executed a snap roll that would have pulverized unaugmented pilots, and accelerated away from the kill zone at velocities that made pursuit impossible without exceeding the Jem'Hadar ship's structural limits. But one SMS fighter wasn't fast enough. Skull 9, a younger pilot on his 3rd combat deployment, took concentrated fire from 4 attack ships simultaneously. His shields collapsed. Polaron beams punched through energy conversion armor. The VF-25's cockpit section took direct hits, and the fighter tumbled away, trailing atmosphere and debris. Skull 9 is down, someone shouted on the tactical net. I'm reading escape pod deployment. Pilot's alive, but fighter is destroyed. Skull 3, provide cover for the rescue, Ozma ordered, his voice carrying command authority that overrode the shock of losing a fighter. Skull 11, retrieve that pod and get it back to the quarter. Everyone else stay focused. We knew there'd be casualties. Don't let his sacrifice be wasted. The battle evolved into a chaotic 3-dimensional knife fight. DS-9's weapon platforms poured fire into Dominion battlecruisers, quantum torpedoes detonating against shields in brilliant flashes of liberated energy. The Defiant, small, fast, armored with ablative plating that made it nearly immune to Polaron beams, darted through the Dominion formation like a shark through a school of fish. Commander Worf's tactical genius was evident in every maneuver, every firing solution, every decision that maximized damage while minimizing exposure. The IKS Chitang decloaked at optimal firing range and unleashed everything: disruptors, photon torpedoes, the aggressive assault doctrine that made Klingons simultaneously terrifying and magnificent as allies. General Martok's voice filled the tactical network with battle cries and targeting orders that carried the weight of 30 years commanding warriors who viewed death in combat as the highest honor. And through it all, Skull Squadron danced. They transformed between modes with timing that made pattern recognition impossible. They pulled maneuvers that violated the Dominion's tactical assumptions about fighter performance. They fired from unexpected angles, exploited momentary vulnerabilities, and demonstrated why SMS had never lost a squadron engagement in 20 years of operation. But 63 Dominion warships was overwhelming force. For every attack ship destroyed, 2 more filled its place. For every battlecruiser disabled, another concentrated fire on DS9's shields. The station's defensive grid was magnificent: overlapping weapon fields, coordinated targeting, centuries of Cardassian military engineering refined by Starfleet expertise. But it wasn't infinite. Shields at 40%, Kira reported from Ops, her voice controlled despite the tactical disaster unfolding. They're concentrating fire on docking pylon 3. If they breach there, we lose atmospheric integrity in 6 habitat sections. Reroute emergency power, Cisco ordered. Pull from non-essential systems. We need those shields holding. On the Macross quarters bridge, Captain Wilder watched the battle unfold, with tactical mind calculating odds, casualties, and the moment when defensive posture had to shift to desperate offense. Rami transformation status. Quarter is ready for battle mode conversion on your order, Captain, the AI replied, her distributed consciousness monitoring every system simultaneously. But I should warn you, the Macross cannon requires significant reactor power. We'll be vulnerable during the charge cycle. Approximately 90 seconds between initiating transformation and weapon-ready state. Can Skull Squadron cover us for 90 seconds? If they concentrate their entire effort on preventing the Dominion from exploiting that vulnerability, yes, but it means pulling them from offensive operations. DS9's shields will take more damage. Casualties will increase. Wilder made the decision commanders spent careers preparing for and hoping they'd never face. Do it. All hands prepare for transformation. Skull Leader, I need your squadron covering the quarter during conversion. We're going to show the Dominion why attacking SMS was a mistake. Copy that, Quarter Actual, Ozma replied. Skull Squadron fall back to defensive screen. Fast pack configurations form perimeter. Super packs, we're going loud. Full missile salvos. Maximum suppression fire. Make them too busy surviving to target the quarter during transformation. The Macross quarter began to change. Hull sections that seemed integral suddenly revealed hinges. Transformation joints reinforced with materials that existed in theoretical physics papers as impossible alloys. Engine blocks unfolded into massive arms. Ventral hull sections split and reformed into legs. The entire vessel, 100 meters and millions of tons, reconfigured from warship to humanoid battle mech with mechanical precision that made the transformation look organic. Dominion fire concentrated on the quarter immediately. Polaron beams hammered shields. Plasma torpedoes detonated in cascading spreads. 20 attack ships broke formation and accelerated toward the transforming vessel with kamikaze vectors, suicide tactics. Crew expendable. Mission success the only metric that mattered. Skull Squadron intercepted them with prejudice. Ozma's superpack configuration unleashed everything. 8 large-bore anti-ship missiles streaked toward the lead attack ship, their reaction warheads carrying yields measured in kilotons. Micro-missile clusters filled space with hundreds of seeking warheads. Beam cannons fired continuously, carving through shields and hull with dimensional resonance that made conventional armor obsolete. The lead attack ship simply ceased to exist, not exploded, not disabled, but erased from existence by firepower that shouldn't be possible from a fighter-sized platform. "That's one," Ozma transmitted. 19 more. Skull Squadron, weapons free. Kill anything that gets within 5,000 kilometers of the quarter. Alto and Michael coordinated instinctively, years of flying together creating combat synergy that bypassed verbal communication. Alto transformed to Batroid and physically grabbed an attack ship. With his mech's manipulators, used it as a shield against fire from its own allies, then emptied his gun pod into its reactor at contact range. Michael provided cover fire, his sniper rifle picking off attack ships, attempting flanking maneuvers with shots that disabled engines without destroying the vessels, leaving them drifting, helpless, crew alive to transmit reports about the impossible fighters that had torn their formation apart. But the Dominion had numbers, discipline, and genetic soldiers who accepted death as victory if it completed their mission. 2 attack ships broke through Skull Squadron's defensive screen. They fired everything: polaron beams, plasma torpedoes, every weapon charged and targeting the quarter's transformation joints. The massive battlemech's shields absorbed most impacts, but concentrated fire at vulnerable articulation points achieved what dispersed fire couldn't. Armor plating buckled. Transformation systems took damage. Warning alarms filled the quarter's bridge as structural stress approached critical thresholds. Shields at 30%, the tactical officer reported. Multiple hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. Damage control teams responding. "Captain, if we take much more fire at the transformation joints..." "Macross cannon status," Wilder interrupted. 70 seconds to full charge. 70 seconds that felt like eternity. On DS9, shields were failing. Kira watched the tactical display with growing horror as section after section of their defensive grid went from green to yellow to red. "Shields at 20%, she reported. "Benjamin, we can't take much more. They're going to breach our hull within minutes." "Then we make those minutes count," Cisco replied. "All weapons target the dreadnought at the center of their formation. That's their command ship. Kill it and they lose coordination." "Sir, that ship has twice the shielding of a battle cruiser." "Then we hit it with everything simultaneously. Coordinate with the Defiant and General Martok. Concentrated fire, all quantum torpedoes. Overload the phasers if we have to. That dreadnought dies now." The combined Federation Klingon assault focused on a single target with firepower that would have reduced most vessels to expanding plasma. Quantum torpedoes, photon torpedoes, disruptors, phasers. Every weapon fired simultaneously at a ship that represented the Dominion's command and control. The dreadnought's shields held, barely. But barely was enough for the Macross cannon to finish charging. Captain Wilder stood on the quarter's bridge, watching his transformed vessel raise one massive arm toward the Dominion formation. Energy gathered at the weapon's focal point, dimensional resonance building, fold space principles, manipulating reality itself, power generation that exceeded some stellar outputs. Macross cannon charged, the tactical officer reported. "Target locked, Dominion dreadnought. Firing solution optimal. Fire." The heavy quantum reaction beam cannon discharged. Reality screamed. The beam was coherent destruction, Dimensional energy focused through principles that Starfleet wouldn't discover for centuries, accelerated through systems that treated physics as suggestions rather than laws. It crossed the distance between the quarter and the dreadnought in microseconds, and it erased the target, not destroyed, not vaporized, erased. The dreadnought's shields didn't just fail, they couldn't exist in the dimensional framework the beam weapon created. The vessel's molecular bonds dissolved, matter converted directly to energy across multiple dimensional spectrums simultaneously. The ship, its crew, its systems, all ceased to exist in this universe. Their particles scattered across dimensional barriers that should have been impenetrable. The explosion registered on sensors as briefly achieving temperatures normally found in stellar cores. Every combatant, Federation, Klingon, Dominion, SMS, stopped firing for exactly 3 seconds, not out of fear, out of awe. "Sweet prophets," someone whispered in DS9's ops. On the Chitang, General Martok laughed, that booming sound carrying fierce approval. "Now that is a weapon worthy of song. Captain Wilder, you and your people have earned warriors' honor today." But the Dominion fleet was already adapting. They'd lost their command ship, lost their central coordination. But Jem'Hadar didn't panic. They simply recalculated, established new command hierarchy, and continued attacking with mechanical efficiency. Except now they knew what the Macross quarter could do, and they changed tactics accordingly. Instead of concentrated assault, they dispersed. Instead of formation combat, they engaged in guerrilla tactics. 20 attack ships broke formation and targeted the quarter from multiple vectors simultaneously, forcing Skull Squadron to spread their defensive screen thin. "They're adapting," Ozma transmitted, frustration evident. "Changing tactics faster than projected. Skull Squadron, stay tight. Don't let them isolate us." But isolation was exactly what the Dominion intended. 4 attack ships bracketed Michael Blank's position, firing from vectors that made evasion impossible without leaving the defensive screen. His shields collapsed under concentrated fire. Polaron beams punched through his VF-25G's armor. "I'm hit," Michael's voice carried pain. "Shields gone, armor compromised. I'm venting atmosphere, transforming to Batroid, sealing cockpit." His fighter transformed mid-damage, the reconfiguration buying precious seconds as armored sections that had been wings became reinforced torso plating. But the damage was catastrophic. "Skull 3, RTB immediately," Ozma ordered. "Your combat ineffective. Get back to the quarter before you lose life support completely." "Negative, lead. I can still fight." "That's an order, Lieutenant. You've done your job. Now let someone else do theirs." RTB. Michael retreated toward the quarter's hangar, his damaged fighter limping home on thrusters that barely maintained thrust. Skull Squadron was down to 13 fighters. DS9's shields were at 9% and failing. The Defiant had taken heavy damage, its ablative armor scored by dozens of hits, and the Dominion still had 40-plus ships in fighting condition. But they'd lost their dreadnought, lost a dozen attack ships, and learned that attacking SMS cost more than their tactical calculations had projected. On the lead, Dominion battlecruiser, now serving as makeshift command ship, the Vorta administrator Wei-Yun reviewed casualty reports with the cold logic of someone genetically programmed to calculate acceptable losses. 15 ships destroyed, 20 damaged. The dreadnought erased by a weapon that shouldn't exist. Variable fighters that outperformed every tactical projection. A capital ship that transformed into a battle mech wielding firepower that rivaled entire fleets. The Founder's orders had been explicit. Capture the dimensional anomaly vessel intact if possible. Destroy it if necessary. Current assessment, capture impossible. Destruction, expensive. Wei-Yun made his decision. All forces, concentrate fire on Deep Space Nine. If we can't capture the anomaly vessel, we eliminate its support base, destroy the station, eliminate the Federation presence, and the anomaly vessel becomes isolated. Without resupply, without repairs, without allies, they'll be vulnerable to follow-up operations. The Dominion fleet shifted targeting priorities, and Deep Space Nine became the primary target of 40 warships firing simultaneously. Deep Space Nine's shields collapsed at 05:23 hours. Not dramatically, just cascading failure as generators overloaded and shut down. "Shields down," Major Kira reported. "Direct hull impacts on sections 12 through 18. Emergency bulkheads holding, fires on decks 4 and 5. Captain Sisko stood at tactical watching 40 Dominion warships hammer his station. Reroute power to structural integrity. DAX, status on Starfleet reinforcements. Multiple warp signatures USS Enterprise E with 12 ships. ETA 10 minutes. Can we hold 10 minutes? Plasma torpedoes hammered the docking ring. Decompression warning screamed. Lights flickered. "We'd better," Dax replied. On the Macross quarter, Captain Wilder calculated survival odds. Rami reactor status, operating at 142% capacity. Macross cannon can fire again in 40 minutes. Transformation joints showing stress fractures. We need to pull back or risk system failure. Negative. DS9 falls, we lose our repair base. Stay in the fight. In space, Skull Squadron fought desperately. Osmalee's VF-25S led 11 fighters in defense that should have been impossible, transforming rapidly to prevent targeting locks. Skull 4, break left, Ozma transmitted. 3 attack ships boxing you in. Alto transformed to Batroid, used superior agility to jump between ships, disabled their weapons, escaped before they could retarget. "They're learning our patterns," Alto reported. "Then we change patterns. Random transformation intervals." Michael Blank's damaged VF-25G took concentrated fire. Shields collapsed. "I'm hit." "Shields gone, armor compromised." Skull 3, RTB immediately. "Your combat ineffective." "I can still..." "That's an order." Michael retreated, fighter limping on failing thrusters. Skull Squadron down to 10 operational fighters. The Dominion changed tactics. Boarding craft launched by dozens. Jem'Hadar assault shuttles carrying 40 soldiers each. "Boarding craft incoming," Kira reported. 20 plus heading for lower docking ring. On Deck 14, Constable Odo led 6 security officers against 40 Jem'Hadar breaching the hull. "This section is Federation territory. Stand down or face lethal force." The Jem'Hadar first raised his rifle. "Fire," Odo ordered. The corridor erupted. 3 officers down. 4 Jem'Hadar killed. Odo shifted to liquid, flowed across the ceiling, reformed behind enemy lines with a throat in his grip. More boarders kept coming. Near main engineering, Chief O'Brien led damage control turned combat unit. "They want engineering. They get through. They disable life support, power, everything. They don't get through." Jem'Hadar came in assault formation, overlapping fire, coordinated movement, genetic soldiers trained for this. O'Brien's team met them with concentrated fire and refusal to yield, but training could only compensate for so much. O'Brien took a Polaron hit to the shoulder. Pain lanced through his arm. He switched hands, kept firing. "Chiefs, hit." "I'm fine. Keep firing. Hold this corridor." The USS Enterprise E dropped out of warp at engagement range. 12 Federation starships in formation. "Red alert," Captain Picard ordered. "Target Dominion capital ships." Type 12 phaser arrays carved through Dominion shields. Quantum torpedoes launched. Galaxy-class cruisers. Akira-class carriers joined the assault. The tactical situation shifted instantly. Wounded defenders now had fresh allies with full shields and weapons. On the lead Dominion battlecruiser, Vorta Weyun reviewed data coldly. Initial force, 63 ships. Current operational, 39 ships. Federation reinforcements, 12 heavy cruisers. Projected casualties, unacceptable. All forces withdraw. Jump to warp on my mark. Transmit tactical data to Dominion Command. We can still win, a Jem'Hadar protested, and lose 20 more ships. We serve strategic objectives, not honor. Withdraw, now. The Dominion fleet broke off precisely, leaving boarding parties to fight to the death. On DS9, Worf led Enterprise security, fresh troops systematically eliminating abandoned Jem'Hadar. Federation security established firing line. 20 officers formed up, opened fire with synchronized precision. The Jem'Hadar caught in crossfire between O'Brien ahead and Worf behind fought until the last fell. When silence came, O'Brien slumped against a bulkhead, wounded shoulder throbbing. Chief O'Brien, you're injured. I've had worse, Commander. Good timing. You held against superior forces with inadequate resources. That is admirable. On the Chitang, General Martok roared orders despite heavy damage. Shields collapsed, armor breached, systems failing. All disruptors concentrate on that battle cruiser. Photon torpedoes fire for effect. The Chitang unleashed everything. The targeted cruiser's shields collapsed, hull breaches cascading. Direct hit on their reactor. The cruiser is disabled. Good. Helm evasive. Explosion rocked the bridge as return fire struck. Sparks and smoke filled the command center. Hull breach deck 3. Casualties. Martok steadied himself, blood streaming from a head wound. Seal those breaches. We're not done. The Chitang limped clear, battered, bleeding atmosphere, but operational. Wounded, but alive. The Chitang withdrawing, Kira reported. Heavy damage. General Martok wounded but alive. Good, Sisko replied. We'll need him. Outside, the Dominion jumped to warp, leaving wreckage and silence. Skull Squadron regrouped around the quarter, fighters showing battle scars. Squadron sound off, Ozma ordered. Pilots reported in. 14 returned. 1, Ramirez from earlier, never would. All pilots accounted for. Squadron combat ineffective. Require rearm and repairs. Copy, Skull Leader. Your squadron performed magnificently. Final casualty count. DS947 KIA. 124 wounded, major hull breaches, shields offline. Defiant, 4 KIA, 17 wounded, ablative armor. 23% Chitang, 12 KIA, 31 wounded, General Martok wounded, heavy damage. Skull Squadron 1 KIA Ramirez, Michael Blank critical, 3 fighters destroyed Dominion, 24 ships destroyed, 15 damaged, 3,000 to plus casualties, mission failed. 30 minutes later, Picard, Sisko, and Wilder met. Captain Wilder, Picard began, your vessel represents technology centuries beyond ours. Complete honesty is required. Wilder explained, SMS, dimensional displacement, fold drive damage, 300 crew needing home. You're refugees. Refugees with firepower that changes your war. We fought beside you. 1 pilot died. That speaks to values transcending tactics. It does. Though Starfleet will have opinions. Then they'll accept alliance, not submission. We coordinate defense, but don't join Starfleet. Take it or leave it. Picard smiled slightly. I think we can work together, though negotiations will be extensive. As discussions continued, neither noticed the Cardassian surveillance device recording everything. The battle was over. Intelligence warfare was beginning. In the Gamma Quadrant, founders received Weyun's reports coldly. New orders. Develop countermeasures. Prepare follow-up operations. neutralize the Macross quarter, one way or another.